Wednesday, January 27th. Dave, can you call the roll?
No.
Or
No, that's me.
Len, sorry. Yeah, Len, please call the roll.
Jill Grant,
Here.
Dave,
Yes.
Claire Tutant,
Here.
Greg Diegas,
Yes. Here.
Ann Haggerty,
Here.
Michelle,
Here.
and I'm here. All 7 present.
Okay, thank you so much. Let's go ahead and start with, before we get into it, I'll review the procedures. So as we go through the agenda, there will be opportunities for public comment, both item 2 on items, public comment on items not on the agenda, and then for each regular agenda item. If you do want to make a comment, you can put it in the chat prior to let people know that you want to make a comment, and please specify the section of the agenda that you would like to comment on. And then when it comes time to approach each of those agenda items, you can make a comment by raising your hand. And to raise your hand, for most versions of Zoom now, it's found at the bottom of the screen under the reactions tab. And then raise hand, you click on reactions and then raise hand. For older versions of Zoom, it's also found on the right side under the participants list. And if you're on your phone, it's under the More tab. Okay, so first item on the agenda is the Board of Supervisors report, and we have Lena Silberman here from the county to go ahead and make that report. Go ahead, Lena.
Thank you, Michelle. So yeah, my name is Lena, and I'm providing a report on behalf of Supervisor Don Horsley's office at the County of San Mateo. So I'm going to start with COVID-19 generally. The state ended the regional stay-at-home order for the Bay Area and other regions Monday, and we are back in the purple tier of the state's pandemic framework. We understand the state's decision was based on more positive indicators, particularly for ICU capacity in all areas of the state, including the Bay Area, which for us is now at 25% available. And you might remember that it was at 15% required. We're projected out for 4 weeks to remain with a positive trajectory, a good trajectory. I know the positive negative can get confusing. In San Mateo County, we currently have 5 ICU beds available, and we are seeing a decreased census in COVID-related acute care. That's not COVID-related cases, just acute care. The return to the purple tier means that while most restrictions remain in place and gatherings are limited to outdoors, some businesses like hair salons and barbershops, personal care services, and outdoor dining may reopen immediately. To be clear, we continue to experience a large number of COVID cases, and the public should remain focused on utilizing protective behaviors such as hand washing, social distancing, wearing face coverings, and avoiding gatherings. Our new case rate is now about 49 cases per 100,000, and our COVID positivity rate is now 5.7% overall and 10% in the lowest healthy places index census tracts. We will remain in the purple tier with its restrictions until our adjusted case rate, which is 25 new cases per 100,000, drops to 7 or below. Our positivity rate for our lowest HPI census tract will also need to drop to 8% below what is now 10%. So I'm going to go into the vaccine, and I did kind of warn that there's a lot of numbers I'm going to throw out. I'm going to try and go slowly just so it's clear, but the vaccine distribution continues under the initial framework established by the federal government and California, in which the federal agreements with CVS and Walgreens vaccinate staff and residents of long-term care and congregate care facilities. The state of California directly supplies the large multi-county healthcare systems, which in our county are Kaiser, Sutter, Seton, and Dignity, for their members and staff. And we, the county, direct the vaccines to other smaller providers not covered by the state and immunize those populations that are not reached through the large healthcare systems. The state immunization registry reports for Monday showed almost 49,000 individuals vaccinated, about 6% of our total county population. That county population does include children who at this time cannot receive the vaccine. I will include links to 4 dashboards. The first regarding COVID-19 generally throughout our county, the second focusing on hospital capacity, And then the third and fourth relating to vaccine distribution in the chat. Actually, I already did. There are about 38,000 healthcare workers and 12,000 residents of long-term care facilities in San Mateo County, making up 50,000 total. We estimate, based on the data, that at least 30,000 healthcare workers in San Mateo County have received first doses. That data does not include healthcare workers who work in San Mateo County and have been vaccinated but live elsewhere, and it does not reflect the federal efforts with CVS and Walgreens targeting long-term care facilities and their residents. Basically, the total number vaccinated is likely higher than what I just said. The federal long-term care partnership program with Walgreens and CVS has scheduled over 90% of the 527 enrolled long-term care facilities in the county, with many already having completed first vaccination clinics. Through our partnership with Safeway and Pharmacy, we provided COVID vaccinations to 765 staff and residents of 6 assisted living facilities, which is different. We also can see from the data dashboard that almost 16,000 residents 65 and older have been vaccinated so far, as we have broadened the population eligible to receive the vaccine consistent with the state guidance. But unfortunately, we are limited by supply. There are about 130,000 San Mateo County residents aged 65 and up, so this would come to be about 12% of that total. The large healthcare systems that receive vaccine directly from the state have also been limited in their supply, but have started reaching out to their older patients. Working closely with Health Plan of San Mateo, we targeted a pilot with One Medical for Health Plan of San Mateo Medi-Cal and Medicare members over the age of 75, with 120 appointments last week, and we are now opening to people age 65 and over. Sorry, we're getting towards the end. Of the 28,725 first doses managed by San Mateo County directly, over 92% have been administered to patients or distributed to other healthcare providers. This week's focus is on population 65 and older in disadvantaged communities, including those served by federally qualified health centers and other community clinics. So this is kind of important that I'm about to say. We have also updated our website with a new form for our residents who would like to be notified when they are eligible for the COVID-19 vaccine. We continue to recommend that our residents start with their own healthcare providers, but we know that others who are not connected to providers will need other pathways, and this form will help us reach those people. I have included a link to the website page that contains the link to the online form. This notification system is an interim strategy as the state assembles a statewide COVID-19 notification system, which will be called My Turn, which is scheduled to launch later in February and has been posted now as a pilot site. I've also included that in the chat. Please note that you must use Chrome or Safari to connect with the state site. Off of that, money for brick and mortar businesses in the food and beverage industry. The San Mateo County Board of Supervisors yesterday matched a $1 million commitment with the Chan Zuckerberg Initiative to help local businesses hit by the pandemic. The matching grants bring the total pledge to more than $2.3 million to the new Restaurant, Brewery, and Winery Relief Program. The application period for grants of up to $10,000 will open as soon as mid-February. Applications submitted within a set time frame will be reviewed to confirm basic eligibility, and each establishment will be placed in a pool of other restaurants located in the same city, town, or unincorporated area. Eligible establishments in each locality pool will be selected at random for grant award until all grants appropriated for that area are exhausted. On to fire and fuel load. Nicholas Calderon, San Mateo County Parks Director, will be presenting a comprehensive list of all possible fuel load reduction projects to the San Mateo County Board of Supervisors on February the 23rd. This will inform best next steps for the San Mateo County Fuel Load Reduction Steering Committee. Evacuations in South County. There are currently 4 zones within San Mateo County that are under evacuation order due to high wind, heavy rain, and heavy rainfall, which causes increasing debris flow potential in and around the CZU complex burn area. The locations are sections SMC E038, SMC E019, SMC E098, and SMC 018. And if that means nothing to you, you can go to Zone Haven map and which I've included in chat to below, and that'll help kind of clarify. Mental health professionals with law enforcement. The pilot program approved on the 12th of January by the San Mateo County Board of Supervisors seeks to diffuse volatile 911 calls and provide appropriate care for nonviolent individuals. Licensed mental health clinicians will join law enforcement officers in Daly City, San Mateo, Redwood City, and South San Francisco as they respond to individuals in a mental health or behavioral crisis. The county and cities expect to have the clinicians embedded in the departments by April. Once the program is launched, the John W. Gardner Center for Youth in their communities at Stanford University will evaluate the intervention and assessment methods by the clinicians and cities with the hopes that we can reach a broader population in the future with this program. My last thing is redistricting. The board established the county's current supervisory districts in November of 2013. To assist with the district drawing process at that time, the board elected to form an advisory committee, and it is now time to reevaluate the districts again. Yesterday, the Board of Supervisors elected to use a committee again. However, they will continue with discussion to solidify what this will actually look like. So that's all I have today, and I'm happy to take questions.
Thank you so much, Lena. Really informative. Let's go ahead with questions. It looks like Greg Dieguez has one.
Actually, I have three. The first is, can we get that emailed to us, Lena? That was a heck of a report. But putting it in chat, it's too much to handle. Secondly, while you were talking, I logged on and registered for both the My Turn and the county COVID alert sites. The county site doesn't allow you to say you live in Montera. The closest cities are Half Moon Bay or Pacifica. You might tell somebody about that. I don't know that I'm going to be disadvantaged because of it, but it'll be interesting to track what happens with that glitch in the software. By the way, Firefox worked, so Chrome, Safari, and maybe Firefox. The last thing is another elected official of note forwarded me a site where you can track where vaccines are available. The only site, this was yesterday, the only site on that map was a Kaiser in Redwood City. Now, did you say there's some other vaccine sites available? Because that was the only San Mateo sites on, and I know, geez, I know 10 guys from racquetball and pickleball. Some have already gotten their shots. They're not even over 65. And the others are scheduled in mid-February down in Palo Alto. So I'm naturally concerned that we don't seem to have the vaccines available that Santa Clara does, and that we only have one site in the county, if my information is correct.
Absolutely. So I will make a note of that you can't say you're from Montera, because that's actually really interesting. I did not know that. So thank you.
It would probably be the entire Midcoast, right? Because Greg, it sounded like you could only choose Half Moon Bay or Pacifica, so we might want
Right.
an option for Midcoast.
Best I could see.
Between, so it would be either the 5 cities or the 5 towns or the entire Midcoast as an option, maybe
Awesome.
with a description.
Yeah, absolutely. I will definitely pass that on. And then to your last point, there is an event. The event center is having San Mateo County allocated vaccines. I don't believe there's another location as of right now that has the San Mateo County vaccines available. I would have to check. I'm trying to how should I answer your question? If you are not going through your healthcare provider and you want to get vaccines, at this point, I think the best recommendation I can give is to just do what you did and sign up for the alerts, because there's a chance that we would add another location. I know we had talked about that at the last meeting. I don't have that information as of yet.
My healthcare provider, my individual doctor, referred me to Sutter, which is the umbrella, and Sutter's not doing anybody under 75 right now.
Mm.
And again, that one site called vaccinate8ca.com doesn't show the event center.
Okay, I will check on that and follow up with you, because I'm not sure.
Okay, thank you. Claire?
Yeah, this is also something maybe if you get a chance, you could look into about the vaccines. I got an email from the county asking for volunteers with medical licenses to volunteer to help with the vaccinations. And I started to fill it out. I did fill it out actually, but they only wanted people between the ages of 18 and 60. So if that's really what they want, they're missing a big bet on retired and semi-retired medical people. So they might want to look at that if they need more people.
Absolutely. Thank you for sharing. I'll pass that on.
Okay, Dave?
Couple of things. Lena, there's no need to mail out all those links. I have them in the chat log, and I'll just go ahead and create a blog post under our agenda item for tonight. And for anybody who wondered, we always have the full chat log on these. We don't normally post it, but we've got it for the minutes and other purposes. And on Vaccine CA, that is a private citizen effort. You can go to the website and tell those people that it's there, but it has nothing to do with the county or the state of California.
Dave saves me once again. Thank you.
Thanks, Dave. Okay, I don't see any other questions for Lena. Okay, let's move on then to other government officials. I think we have Harvey and Bob here from the city of Half Moon Bay, but Bob is going to give the report tonight. Bob Nisbet. Is that right?
Sure, I'll go first, and then Harvey, if you have anything to follow, you can go right after. Yeah, thanks for having me tonight. Bob Nisbet, City Manager for the City of Half Moon Bay and also El Granada resident. I'm here tonight to announce a really important meeting that's coming up and to invite your council to attend, and also ask that maybe you assist in getting the word out to folks on the Midcoast. So the meeting that is coming up is February 11th at 6 o'clock. Of course, it's virtual on Zoom. We are going to be promoting it as much as we can over the next 2 weeks through our normal channels, e-news on our website, me going to meetings like this, individual calls to people in the community and on the coast side. And I actually have a link that I could, if you have a general email, or if I could send it to Dave, the link is already up, because we do want people to register for the meeting. Very simple to register, but it will help us compile a list of attendees and also help when we do some breakout rooms. So the meeting is a city council sponsored meeting. It's really the city's signature community engagement effort for 2021. This idea was presented to the council at their last meeting last week. And what we have come up with is that as the nation, the state, the community comes out of this crisis, this pandemic, this economic crisis, social crisis of 2020 and now into 2021, it's not too early to start thinking about recovery, economic recovery, social recovery, human recovery. It was a traumatic year. It was a traumatic, once in 100-year pandemic. And if we think that life is going to be the same on the other end, it's not. We all know that. We joke about the new normal, but we don't know what the new normal is. No one knows yet. But I think when historians look back 30, 40 years from now, at this time, this is going to be a change of an era. There's just no question in my mind. This is historic, and we're approaching a new era of humanity, and I think it's going to be interesting to see what happens when people come out of hibernation, hopefully soon, when those vaccinations become plentiful. I just think you're going to see a spirit, a human spirit that we just have not witnessed for a long time. We are social animals, And there is going to be opportunities for individuals, families, nonprofits, associations, new ways to connect, and absolutely entrepreneurship. We're going to see entrepreneurs come out from all over the place and do what America does best. And history shows that this is the case. The last pandemic of 1918, of course, after that, there was the Roaring 20s. So it might not happen in one day or 1 year, but we're going to see it in the next 3 to 5 years, I think. So the council wants to be on top of this. We don't want to wait to see what happens to the coast. We want to be thoughtful, and we want to engage the community in a way to have the community be a part of the vision of the coast side in whatever this new normal, this new era is. And so it's about recovery. It's about economic recovery. It's about people. It's about businesses. And it's about a new way that we're going to be interacting as a small community with each other, with businesses, and with all of our social associations that we have. So it's a pretty cool thing. The council's excited about it. The way we're kicking it off is with what we're calling an open house. And that's February 11th at 6 o'clock. Again, I can send the link, but you'll see it advertised. It'll be on our website. Please sign up. We encourage all of you, all 7 members, to come, and to the extent you can get the word out. It is called the Coastside Recovery Initiative. Coastside Recovery Initiative. Yes, we're leading it as the city of Half Moon Bay, and obviously there will be ideas and priorities and strategies that are centric to Half Moon Bay, but we do see it as a coast side. We see a larger umbrella here for this initiative. We are one coast side, and so we need to look at our region together as part of this recovery. So that's what it's called, Coastside Recovery Initiative. We encourage folks from all the areas on the Midcoast to attend. Please come and please help us get the word out. It's going to be really exciting. We do have a keynote speaker. Lenny Mendonça has agreed to speak at this event. So that'll be very interesting. A lot of you know him, local business owner, well-known person on the coast side, very brilliant man, and was also in the governor's office on economic development and business for about a year. So yeah, hopefully that got you inspired, and hope to see you and other folks from the Midcoast on February 11th, 6 o'clock. And just please register. Thanks a lot. I'll turn it over to Councilmember Rarbeck.
I have very little to add.
Questions for Bob first?
Well, let's let Harvey speak, and then we'll have questions for both of them.
I have very little to add to what our city manager said, except to emphasize that our efforts are for the whole coast side, not just Half Moon Bay. So please tell all your friends to get involved in the open house on February 11th, and we welcome any ideas on how we can recover as a coast side, not just as a city. So that's where I'm coming from. Thank you.
Thank you both, and thanks for including us. It sounds like an amazing event, and we can, if you would go ahead and post the link to the sign up in the chat, we can get people on here signing up right away, and we can also post it on our website and social channels as well.
I will attempt to do that right now.
Okay, great.
And
Let's
so
go to.
I'll put it on the website.
Perfect. Thanks, Dave. Len had a question first.
Well, I appreciate the comments both Bob and Harvey both made about this being a coast-side effort. I'm wondering if you would consider putting people like our chair or vice chair into the planning process rather than bring us to it fully planned.
I'm Chair and members of the commission. If I guess I didn't even add this part, and I apologize. And maybe Len was aware of this, but so yeah, the open house is the kickoff, and that's to generate interest and start a conversation about recovery, which we see as possibly a year or two of recovery. From that point, folks that are more inspired, more interested, and want to be more a part of it we are going to create a task force. So after the open house, we will create this task force of maybe 12 to 15 members who will meet, regularly, be facilitated by city staff, and that task force will be the body that comes up with ideas and works for a year or two to present a deliverable to the city council with different ideas, strategies, priorities, and so forth. And so I think to Len's question, yeah, we are going to have a kind of an application process to seat that task force, and obviously we want it to be well balanced. We want it to be inclusive, with the obvious focus on economics and businesses. But absolutely, I think that's how I took his comment. So come to the open house, and it'll be from that point that we start to make the decision on how to form the membership of the task force.
So is we the city council of Half Moon Bay?
At this point, no, that's not our recommendation.
You said we'll do this to get up to it.
It'll be a staff formed committee. It will be a committee that meets and will be open to the public, but it will not be a legal committee formed by the council subject to the Brown Act.
Thank you.
Okay, thank you. Claire?
My question was very similar to Len's, and I appreciate your answering that. My focus was more on this coming meeting. Would you desire any help from any of us in setting it up other than just spreading the word?
Oh, I'm sorry. Maybe that was Len's question and I went on in a different direction.
That's right.
But your question prompted me to mention the task force, which I forgot to mention. No, thank you for that. We got all of our staff is going to be, all the department heads are going to be helping. We actually have a facilitator that we've hired. So really appreciate the offer. But I do think we have the logistics handled, and we will be doing breakout rooms, which does take some logistical work on Zoom. But I think we do have all the staff people we need to cover that. Obviously, if you're participating in a breakout room at a table, you would announce yourself as a Midcoast Community Council person and participate in that capacity if you wanted to.
Thank you.
Thank you. Any other questions for Bob or Harvey? Okay, I see we have a couple other people here who are government officials. I'm not sure if they want to speak. So if anyone else wants to speak in this section as a government official, could you please raise your hand or go ahead and start speaking? See, we have Michelle. I think that's Michelle Dragony, who probably wants to make a comment during public comment. So seeing as there are no other government officials, let's go on to public comment. And we can start with Michelle.
Hi, I was attending the the Coastside Fire Protection meeting, which was at 6 o'clock tonight. And I know you guys were talking at the retreat about the dark skies and the fire station. And I want you to know that they are actually, Jonathan Cox said that they are already talking to the architect and they're working on they're actually getting a dimmer purchase order. So they're on it. So your
That's
civic activism worked. Just want to let you know.
Thank you. That's actually an item on the agenda tonight. So it's great that you said that now. Maybe you didn't want to wait around until the end of the meeting when we got to that, but that's good to know. Thank you so much. Are there any other comments from the public on items that are not on tonight's agenda? Okay, I don't see anything else. So let's go ahead and move to the consent agenda. We weren't able to post the minutes prior to this meeting, so I believe we have a motion to remove them.
Yes, I'd like to move that we continue agenda items 3A and 3B to a future meeting unspecified.
Is there a second?
Second.
Okay. Can we take a vote on that then? Len, please call the roll.
Sure.
And yeah, this is just to remove items. To be clear, this is to remove items 3A and 3B, and then we will, after this, vote on item 3C.
Can you read the items 3A and 3B?
3A
3A,
is the minutes for the January 13th meeting, and 3B is the minutes from the January 23rd retreat.
okay. To call the vote, Michelle,
Yes.
myself, yes. Dan,
Yes.
Greg,
Yes,
Claire. Claire,
You're on
Yes.
mute, Claire.
Yes.
yes. Dave,
Yes.
Jill,
Yes.
7-0 passes.
Okay. And so remaining on the consent agenda is item 3C, which are the committee and task assignments that we reviewed at the retreat. So now we will vote on the consent agenda to approve that item. Lynn, can you call the roll again?
Okay,
We need a motion.
Oh, sorry. We need a motion to approve. Claire made a motion.
Yeah.
second,
Second from Lynn. Please call the minutes to approve the consent agenda.
Jill,
Yes.
Dave,
Yes.
Claire,
Yes.
Greg,
yes,
Dan,
Yes.
myself, yes. Michelle,
Yes.
passes 7-0.
Okay, great. Thank you. Let's move on to item 4A, which is a draft of the child care ordinance. We have Camille Lung here from the County Planning and Building Department, and she's going to present a PowerPoint deck of a new child care ordinance. Camille,
Hi.
go ahead.
Good evening,
Thanks for
MCC
being here.
members of the public. Thank you for having me, Michelle, and for coordinating our presentation. I just want to introduce myself. I'm a senior planner at the County of San Mateo Planning Department. I've been there for a little while, probably around 15 years. And I prepared this draft childcare ordinance, but with a lot of help. People are actually on this call who helped me a lot are Kristen Anderson from the Child Care Partnership Council, Randy Torrios from the Supervisor Pine's office, Sarah Kinahan, who prepared the 2017 Child Care Needs Assessment, Joe LeClaire from the county's Long Range Planning Department, who advised me a lot on this ordinance. And just wanted to thank them. And they're also available. We have a lot of child care experts on the call. So in case there's any questions about that, they're here. And the purpose of my presentation is really just to give you the MCC and the public an overview of the new draft child care ordinance, to answer any questions and to collect any feedback. So I will at this time share my screen. So can you see my first slide?
Yep, looks good.
Okay, great. So just launching into it, the new childcare ordinance would not apply in cities. It would just apply in unincorporated areas of San Mateo County. And it would apply both on the bay side and the coast side, primarily on the coast side in the areas of the Midcoast, San Gregorio, and Pescadero. So just to run through the current existing conditions, our current regulation does not require a planning permit for small family daycare homes, and those are childcare services provided within a childcare provider's home. They can be up to about 8 kids, which is the state limit for small family daycare homes. Large family daycare homes are pretty much the same things, childcare services provided within a provider's home, and it's up to 14 children under the large family daycares. And our current regulations require a ministerial process. However, state law, I believe it was about a year ago, was adopted that permits large family daycare homes by right now. So for small family and large family daycare homes, no additional permits are needed through planning. Our current regulation requires a use permit for the most part for setting up childcare centers, which are childcare services provided in a non-residential setting and more of a facility setting. And current regulation has 3 districts in North Fair Oaks where childcare uses are allowed. But to set up a childcare center in a residential zoning district, a use permit is required, as well as different separate zoning districts require use permits for setting up childcare centers. So there's challenges with our current regulation. First off, there's a great need in the community for additional childcare services. There was a 2017 childcare and preschool needs assessment done by the County Office of Education, done by Sarah Kinahan's firm, and she's on this call, which identified on the coast the largest deficits in Montera, Pacifica, and Pescadero. As far as on the coast. In terms of deficits for infant and toddler spaces, in Pacifica, about 51% of the demand is met by existing services. In Montera, it's estimated that 46% of the demand is met. And in Pescadero, 0% of the demand is met based on the assessment. And in terms of preschool spaces, there's also deficits in Montera, Moss Beach, and Pescadero, where only a percentage of the demand is being met. And just in terms of COVID, you know, when everyone gets vaccinated and some may return to work, some may not, some may continue to work at home. And I think things have really changed in terms of being able to work from home for industries across the board. However, for families with young children, especially non-school age children, it's quite difficult to set up remote learning programs for non-school age children, and they're not at an age that they can just do remote learning for that's productive. So, and as far as people working from home, it may be difficult to supervise that as well as do their work. And then also there's frontline workers who don't have the luxury of working from home and would need to seek childcare in order to do their jobs. So we're pretty sure that childcare is still going to be a very high necessity for families going forward, even after COVID. So as I had illustrated, there's no countywide regulations, sort of district by district. It's a patchwork of regulations. There's a lack of clear regulation requirements because our regulations are actually not updated to reflect a lot of the state updates that have occurred. And the use permit process, which is required for most childcare centers, can be costly, time-consuming, unpredictable for the childcare developer. So the overarching goal of the draft childcare ordinance is to really ease and incentivize the expansion of childcare services within San Mateo County, an incorporated area. What the ordinance hopes to achieve is to replace the patchwork with clear regulation, to expedite the process for childcare centers under compatible conditions, and identify those conditions that would work easily and well and minimize impacts to surrounding uses. Also to provide a program to authorize existing unpermitted childcare facilities, which don't believe any have been identified on the coast. And also to provide incentives for childcare centers that are associated with employment centers. You may be familiar with a childcare center that's set up at the County of San Mateo. That's an example of a childcare center that's serving an employment center. And also incentivize childcare centers at transit-oriented development. And the overarching idea here is that if you locate the childcare center where people go for work or where people take public transportation, then you're removing a stop and they're, for parents to get their children to childcare, and thereby making it more convenient and reducing an extra trip and reducing traffic. So what the new ordinance does is it sets up a new ministerial permit process for childcare centers, which doesn't currently exist in unincorporated county. It maintains a ministerial permit process for small and large family daycare homes. It extends the ministerial permit process to childcare centers and basically identifies situations where impact would be minimized. And what we did was we used in the coastal zone, we used the coastal development permit exemptions to guide and inform the ordinance in terms of the types of conditions that would be least impactful to the environment as well as to nearby uses. We've identified that existing placement or location of childcare centers within existing buildings that have a similar purpose, intensity, and parking need, such as institutional, commercial, and public facilities, would be an easy location that would reduce impacts that if meeting all the criteria could be eligible for a ministerial permit, as well as say a portion of a more mixed use facility where you have the commercial component, a childcare in there next to residential, or say a multifamily building where say one of the units is converted to a childcare center, or say the fitness room. Also, the ordinance allows for minor additions with a ministerial permit according to criteria. It also maintains the use permit process that we currently have for projects that don't fit the criteria and could be a little bit more complicated in terms of their compatibility with surrounding uses. But however, it does streamline the appeals process for those use permits and eliminates use permit renewal requirements. The outline of the ordinance starts with the purpose, provides definitions, has a section that addresses small and large family care homes, the fact that no planning permits required, and has two sections for childcare centers, ministerial and use permit sections, and describes the processes. Also, it describes the process for permitting unpermitted facilities. There's an application date of 1 year from the adoption of the ordinance, and it would apply, the amnesty program would apply to facilities that have been in the same location for 3 years or more with the state permits documentation. And there's also an incentive section of the ordinance that provides a floor area and parking waiver for eligible employment centers. So sorry, for childcare centers located within these eligible employment centers. And it basically forgives the floor area of the childcare center and waives the parking for the childcare center, not the associated business. It also provides incentives of density, floor area, and parking waivers for eligible housing development. So if you co-locate childcare center with a housing development, you could get an increase in density. The floor area would not be counted for the childcare center, and parking for the childcare center would be waived. So in the coastal zone, the areas affected would be, by this ordinance and the new ministerial process, would be the commercial areas, the institutional areas, and single family residential areas. Also, the ordinance allows for, regardless of zoning, the location of a childcare center within an existing institutional building or public facility, kind of making the argument that childcare centers are similar to a school use. And this, the ministerial permit process would apply to urban and rural areas. So the use permit process is about the same for those childcare centers needing a use permit, but it still identifies that, say if you're converting a single family residence on a parcel of less than 10,000, that would still trigger the use permit. Also, a new childcare building would still require a use permit. A childcare involving an addition greater than 10% or any new stories in a scenic corridor or appeals jurisdiction. The Coastal Commission appeals jurisdiction would trigger the use permit and a CDP in all these instances, and location, of course, within the M1 zoning district. So those are the more difficult scenarios. These are the what we found to be the more compatible scenarios that would qualify for a ministerial permit. And that's conversion of a single family residence on a parcel that's 10,000 square feet or greater in a residential zoning district, including some amount of expansion. What you see here in blue has been added to the criteria of the coastal development permit exemption. So in addition to the 4 criteria that are not highlighted in blue, which are from the coastal permit exemptions worksheet for development, we've added 3 in blue to further add criteria to these types of projects, the conversion of a single family residence to a childcare center. And the main one is that we're imposing, if this is adopted, we would impose a 1 parking space for every 6 children requirement for the residential parcel. The parcel would have to be 10,000 square feet or larger, in a residential zoning district, and if it's located within a sensitive habitat or buffer zone, it would trigger a use permit. And any new building or replacement building would trigger the use permit as well. And this table is from the ordinance itself. So these are the areas where we've identified parcels, residential parcels that are actually 10,000 square feet or greater. So as you know, most of these areas have a minimum lot size of 5,000, but there are actually in kind of a good amount of places spread out residential parcels 10,000 square feet or greater. So this is conceptual. You know, we don't know how much parking is provided at these parcels. We don't know whether they would meet all the criteria of the ministerial permit, but this is just sort of a rough identification of the parcels by parcel size that would meet the criteria. In Pescadero, the beige parcels are the parcels that are both R1 and 10,000 square feet or larger. San Gregorio, there's a few parcels there. So essentially, we're arguing to the Coastal Commission that converting a single family residence on such a parcel would not be a intensification of use. And this is based on the argument that the large family childcare home, which allows up to 14 children, is allowed by state law. And because there is a parking requirement also added, which requires on-site parking of 1 parking space for every 6 children, it reduces the intensity. It sort of limits the intensity of a particular parcel to take on more children. Also, this childcare center, say if it's converted from a residential use, would not support a current residential use. So the residential use would go away, the childcare center would go in. So the other ministerial permit opportunity for childcare centers is location within an existing building in an institutional or commercial zoning district on the coast side, or within an existing institutional building or public facility. So as you can see here, the first 4 criteria relate to development qualifying for a coastal permit exemption. And then we've added the last 2 at the bottom, that if the existing building houses a visitor serving commercial use, then that cannot be converted to a childcare center without a use permit. Also, if it's located within a sensitive habitat or buffer zone, it would need a use permit CDP. So these are the areas that are either institutionally designated for general plan designated for institutional use or zoned C1 on the mid-coast. So these are just sort of the downtown areas of the particular neighborhoods. And the ordinance would allow for conversion of the existing building with some amount of alteration, meeting the criteria that we just went through. In San Gregorio, these are the C1 parcels. In Pescadero, they're C1 parcels, as well as some institutional designated parcels. And we're talking about the existing buildings in these areas. Pescadero is a little tricky because it's located within a floodplain. So a lot of those buildings could be potentially 1 to 3 feet below the base flood elevation. Meaning those buildings could flood. And the way that our current regulations require that any intensification of use would require the development to meet the base flood elevation. So essentially, if there is an intensification of use, if it's already a very intense use, and the child care center would be of a similar intensity, then it would not be an intensification of use, not requiring construction to the BFE. But if it's a very low intensity use replaced by the child care center, which is being a more intense use, then the building would have to be raised to the BFE. Also, if substantial constructed improvements exceed 50% of the valuation of the existing building, then the development would have to meet the base flood elevation plus 1 foot in that instance. I have to say a lot of the childcare centers that are within existing buildings generally don't require a lot of tenant improvement to start. Also, evacuation plans would be required for all new childcare centers within the floodplain or floodway. So we discussed the required parking for residential, but for commercial, it's per the Institute of Transportation Engineers, the ITE manual, that one parking space is required for every 4 enrolled children, or 3 parking spaces for every 1,000 square feet of gross floor area, whichever is lower. There is a parking reduction for if it's in a childcare center is accessory to another larger main use, such as multifamily residential or commercial. Or if it's an affiliated use. So if the child care center is affiliated with, like, say, an employment center, or either one business or a group of businesses, it's affiliated, and a parking reduction could be granted if they have to be within a quarter mile of each other, and also if they're located within a quarter mile of a transit center. For the conversion of single family dwellings to a child care center, design review requirements pertaining to residences does apply to the child care center, and they would need to conform with the overall look of the neighborhood still. And then also the ordinance basically provides a link to state law. There's a density bonus provided by state law for childcare centers associated with commercial and industrial development, as well as residential. And then I discussed the incentives provided by the county. So just the next steps, or just the overall public engagement that has already occurred. We prepared a negative declaration. It does not actually include any mitigation measures because the mitigation measures are built into the ordinance. And that was released in November. And I made a presentation to the Coastal Commission at the end of November as well. I've made presentations to the Child Care Partnership Council a year or 2 ago. Also made a recent presentation of this ordinance to the Transportation Working Group, giving them some pointed questions about parking and traffic, which their comments have been incorporated into this ordinance. I'm making this presentation today to you. And then in terms of upcoming presentations, the North Fair Oaks Community Council is tomorrow night. So we'll get their feedback on how this applies to North Fair Oaks. And then a planning commission hearing is planned for March or April with a board of supervisors meeting afterwards. And I just wanted to thank you for your time. I hope that wasn't too confusing. You can feel free, members of the public or MCC, to comment on this ordinance by emailing myself at the email on the slide. You can comment on the negative declaration, which is posted to the county's website. And you can also attend any of the upcoming meetings. So with that, I'll conclude my presentation. And if you have any questions, I'm available to help answer them.
Thank you, Camille. I can attest to how difficult it is to find childcare. I'm currently in the process of finding that for my 7-month-old baby, and it's very difficult. Let's start by going around the council. Does anyone on the council have questions? If so, please raise your hand. Okay, Len. Len, you're on mute if you're trying to speak.
Camille, thank you for the presentation. In the Midcoast, we have the city or the town of Miramar, which is a township really divided between the city of Half Moon Bay and the Midcoast.
Right.
Do you know if these regulations and governances are at all different between Half Moon Bay, so that it would make considerable difference where you live as to what to follow?
Well, in terms of being able to serve the city of Half Moon Bay, any childcare centers located anywhere can serve anyone. But yeah, this would not apply to the city of Half Moon Bay. But childcare would be located in that neighborhood and hopefully serve some of those residents. I don't know that they're working on a childcare ordinance. Does that answer the question?
Okay. Next is Dave.
Hi. Yeah, I'm generally very supportive of this. I'm a little concerned about the impact on neighborhoods, because up to 6 children or 8 children or whatever in a converted dwelling or partially converted dwelling does mean a lot more car trips and intermittent parking shortages while kids are being dropped off and delivered. And did I understand you to say that the change in state law requires that to be ministerial now?
Yes, for up to 8 kids and even up to 14 kids. Any daycare home serving up to 14 kids is allowed by right. The childcare centers, say there's 4 spaces, 2 spaces in a garage and 2 spaces in a driveway for a normal residential parcel. So 1 parking space for every 6 kids would limit the children to 24 kids. So 24 kids for a 10,000 square foot parcel. I think that's why we settled on 10,000, just to give a little bit of buffer in terms of noise and playrooms, yard space and things like that. But also, as you can see, the areas are spread out. The parcels qualifying for the 10,000 are spread out, and hopefully there won't be too much of a concentration causing too much of an issue for our neighborhood. Also, we're hoping that if there's more childcare centers or large family childcare homes set up, that more people will walk to their nearby childcare facility versus having to drive so far to get to the one.
Many of them, so people are unlikely to be able to walk to them, especially 10,000 square foot parcels. None of them are in the highly populated areas to speak of. All right, if it's required by the state, then I'll not go further with it. Thanks.
Okay, let's go next to Claire.
This may be a nitpicky thing, but I'm looking at this with a legal point of view. And I noticed that you are talking about single family dwellings as a site for childcare. What if somebody lives in a duplex or something and wants to have a childcare service there? Would this ordinance not account for that situation?
Essentially, state law already permits any housing unit, including duplexes, apartment buildings, to have a small or large family care home. And that's probably more appropriate that someone in a duplex could have up to just 14 kids, but they would not be eligible for the ministerial permit process, no.
Because of it not being a single family dwelling?
For a childcare center, but they're allowed up to 14 kids, right, under a large family childcare home.
Okay. I just the language, I wanted to know if that, you may want to take another look at it, see if it needs to include things other than single family dwellings.
The childcare family homes
Okay,
include.
that's what that is. Okay. All right.
Yeah.
Thank
Yeah, I had a similar question, but about, I wasn't clear on lots that that are less than 10,000 square feet. Like, let's say a lot is 5,000 square feet. What's the allowed daycare situation there?
You can have a small or large daycare family home up to 8 or 14 kids, right now without a planning permit. However, if you wanted to do a childcare, since it doesn't meet the criteria of the ministerial permit, it would require a use permit, as it would today, still.
Okay, got it. Okay. I see a couple hands raised by members of the public. Let's go first with Carlisle Ann Young.
Hi, Camille, I might have just misheard you, but did you say this was also applicable for people that house seniors, like an adult care home, or is it only childcare?
Just childcare. It does not
Okay.
relate to, adult care facilities.
I think when I heard you say family, maybe that's what and so did I also hear you say if you convert it to a child care center, it can no longer be a single family home as a
Right.
residence? Okay.
That's right. A child care center doesn't hold both the residential use and a child care. Child care centers are only child care centers, while child care homes, the large and the small family care homes, contain a residence as well as provide childcare services. That's the main difference between the two kinds of facilities.
Oh, so if you had one kind, you could still live there, right?
You can have up to 14
Okay,
children.
that's what I didn't understand. All right. And then let's see. I think I was going to ask you if what triggered this, but you probably already answered it. It's a state law that now you guys, San Mateo County, has to adapt to the unincorporated areas and everything. Okay. While I have you on the call, I was wondering if you could quickly answer a question. I looked on the county website at one point. They had permit amnesties for illegally, made permits without, improvements without permits, but the amnesty did not apply to the coast side. And I wanted to know if that's still true, or if not, if they're not going to extend it, why not? Do you know?
Does that pertain to childcare or pertain to something else?
No, it doesn't, but you said you're the planner, so I just wondered if you knew about the amnesty program for permits. No?
And why don't you reach out offline about that, since we do need to stick to the
I
topic
will do
here.
that since she doesn't seem to know. That's okay. I had, what? I'm sorry, Camille.
I'm not familiar with that.
Yeah, that's okay. And so are you also not familiar with what the status of Plan Princeton is?
Yeah, Summer
Let's
would
hold
be-
off on that. Let's
Could
hold
she
off on
answer
that.
it, please? I just want to ask her.
Well,
She almost
Joe Leclerc's on the line, but this should probably.
I'll answer in the chat if that's okay.
Good. Thank you. I appreciate
Perfect.
it. Okay.
Thank you. Okay, next, let's go to Catherine Slater-Carter.
Good evening. I want to start out my comments by congratulating all the new people and thanking all the new people on the Midcoast Community Council and thanking the people who have stayed. You are an awesome group, and I'm really impressed by the questions you're asking and your agenda topics. As a citizen, I thank you very, very much. I wanted to ask Camille, I heard that under some circumstances, a use permit doesn't need to be renewed. I know the county has been pretty casual about use permits in the past, and it sounds like they're preferring not to be in that part of ministerial work. But if a house goes from being a single family residence to being a daycare center, and then there's no use permit checking, what is there that keeps the neighborhood that allows the neighborhood the opportunity to say, no, the parking requirements aren't being met, or the noise requirements aren't being met, or the traffic requirements aren't being met, hoping that people will walk their kids to daycare. I agree with Dave. You're not going to walk your 1-year-old to daycare. Particularly, it's contradictory to what you said about wanting to make everything more single trip, consistent kinds of trips. So I'm concerned why this use permit is not going to be, I feel rather that this lack of use permit checking denies the neighborhood an opportunity for open public communication on what's going on.
So thanks, Catherine. The you may be familiar that when we issue a use permit, currently there's administrative review that has planning staff check to make sure all the conditions of the permit are still being met. Administrative reviews can still be applied to a use permit. However, we have heard from childcare providers that the use permit renewal requirement is honestly, it's an overwhelming burden for them to have their business and economic livelihood on the line every time the use permit term is up, and now they're up for renewal with the chance of being unrenewed and with the chance of their investments being wasted. So, and having to set up someplace else. So that is why we're eliminating the use permit renewal requirements. However, the use permit administrative review requirement can still be added to the use permit. In terms of walking children to the daycare center, I mean, the point is that we want to locate as many childcare centers close to home or close to work. These are the two places that most people are at. So if it's close to home, that eliminates a trip, or if it's close to work, that eliminates a trip. And the more childcare centers or daycare homes that are established in our own communities would reduce traffic overall.
Well, Camille, I appreciate that, but I still see that the neighborhood and the neighbors are being denied their access to being able to remedy problems. And I believe that the very least you can do is notify the neighbors when a review is coming up. I had my own business, and I know a whole lot of other people who have their own businesses. And we were subject to all kinds of restrictions and conditions, not only by ours was in a city, but not only by the city, but also by the fire department and the health department and all kinds of things. And yes, it was a problem, but those kinds of requirements kept up the public health and safety, particularly for things like restaurants, where if they don't need food safety, they have to close down. If we had no food safety checks in restaurants, it would be likely that we would have some serious health food poisoning problems. So I think that considering the community is and the neighbors is a very important part of this, and I ask that you reconsider.
Well, I agree. And there's always our code compliance process. If there is an observation that a childcare center is not meeting the requirements of its permit, a complaint can be filed with code and we will certainly look into it. There is a notification after a decision has been made on the ministerial permit to neighbors in the area. Just want to clarify that.
Thank you.
Thank you. Let's go to Dan Haggerty next.
Yeah, thank you, Camille. Pretty long presentation, pretty complicated, hard to follow. Just want to be clear. So essentially, this ordinance is purpose of it is to make possible larger child care centers in residential areas. Correct?
It doesn't necessarily have to be larger. It can still be within the existing home.
Not necessarily, but it's allowing larger, right? It's
More
making it
children,
possible.
not necessarily larger in size, but more children than 14. Yes.
Okay.
Yeah.
And so, why I'm just, I'm just asking why. Why would you go this route? Why would you not like incentivize maybe small subsidizing of smaller daycare centers? Why would you want to encourage larger daycare centers in residential communities rather than having more smaller ones? And is there any other movement in other cities, or what is really behind this?
It's the deficit of the childcare services.
Right.
San Mateo
So we
County.
can meet that deficit by encouraging more smaller centers, correct?
Well, in a sense, they're already incentivized because state law has
They're
removed
allowed, but
the
there's no
barriers
county.
for small and large family daycare centers. However, what we've tried to do is allow the conversion of a single family residence on a larger parcel. So the proportionality of children to space is retained. So we try to just identify where these, they're not larger necessarily, they just have more children, where these childcare centers with more children can go. And we've identified these larger parcels.
Can I add to that for just a second, Camille?
Yeah.
This is Joe Leclerc. Dan, I just want to add that the ordinance is not focused on exclusively on expanding childcare opportunities in residential neighborhoods. The primary focus of the ordinance is to streamline the permitting process for childcare centers everywhere, and primarily in commercial areas, institutional areas, and places where they're generally located now. We don't talk to very many people who want to locate larger childcare centers in neighborhoods because it's difficult to find places that are suitable, and because it's also more difficult to get clientele. But as Michelle said at the outset, people really struggle to find childcare, and incentivizing the provision of it is important, as Camille said. Thanks, Camille.
Thank you.
Thank you. Do I have anyone else who wants to make a comment either on the council or in the public? I don't think so. Okay. Thank you so much, Camille, for being here and for presenting that. We appreciate the presentation and the update.
Oh, I think
Okay.
Sarah has her hand raised. Sarah Kinahan.
Oh, that's right, Sarah. Apologies, Sarah. I know you did have a comment that you wanted to make, and you emailed something. Did you want to just read it out loud, or go ahead and speak?
Yeah, sure. I can read the comment I sent via email. So good evening, council members and others attending this meeting. I'm the coordinator for the San Mateo County Child Care Partnership Council, And we are an advisory body to the County Board of Supervisors and the County Superintendent of Schools on matters related to childcare planning and preschool planning. And I've been working with Camille for, I think it's been a few years now, on this draft ordinance, along with staff from Build Up for San Mateo County's Children and other childcare experts to update the childcare ordinance. And again, the purpose was that, as Camille said, there was really a patchwork of regulations across unincorporated San Mateo County, and there was a lack of clarity for new programs that we're looking to open and meet the needs in the community. So we are very excited to see this draft ordinance moving closer to approval and implementation. The draft being presented to you tonight will make it easier for new childcare programs to navigate the planning and permitting process and to help increase the supply of childcare to address ongoing supply gaps. In the 2017 childcare needs assessment that I conducted that Camille referenced, we found that in the Half Moon Bay and Midcoast region, there was a supply gap of over 400 spaces for children ages 0 to 4. So we really commend the county for taking steps to streamline the regulations for developing new childcare programs to better meet community needs. Thank you.
Thank you, Sarah. Okay, great. Well, thanks everyone for being here on that. Thank you for your comments, and we will go ahead and move on to the next agenda item. So the next agenda item is the Connect the COSIDE final administrative draft, which came out just last week. It's a project that's been in the works for a really long time, and we're excited to see it moving forward. So tonight we have Joe Leclerc from the County Planning and Building Office Department, who is going to present the draft.
Thank you,
Joe?
Chair. Yeah, thank you, Chair Weil and council members. We're grateful for you hosting us tonight at your meeting and for your help with outreach last summer and for your continued input during the drafting process of Connect the COSIDE this past fall and winter. A year ago, the county made an effort to improve, a concerted effort to improve our engagement and listening on the COSIDE. And we were able to reach a broader population of COSIDE residents during our outreach efforts. Much of what we heard has been addressed in the final administrative draft we are presenting tonight. We look forward to your question and input tonight at the Planning Commission's February 10th public workshop, which will be happening at 9 o'clock in the morning that day, and at the February 24th Midcoast Community Council meeting, again, if there's room on your agenda. Now I'd like to ask Katie Faulkner and Chanda Singh, our project manager for Connect the COSIDE, to present the final administrative draft of the Connect the COSIDE.
Thanks, Joe. All right, I'm going to go ahead and share my screen with our presentation. All right, can everyone see that all right?
Yeah.
I'll get us started. First off, thank you, members of the Midcoast Community Council, for having us here today to discuss the updates to the Connect the COSIDE plan. And thank you to members of the public for joining us tonight for this presentation and discussion. My name is Katie Faulkner, and I'm a long-range planner with the County of San Mateo Planning and Building Department. And I'll be presenting tonight along with my colleague, Chanda Singh, Senior Transportation Planner, and you just heard from our other colleague, Joe Leclerc. So tonight, we're going to start with some quick background on Connect the COSIDE, just for anyone who might be new to this effort. Then we're going to give a broad overview of what we heard from folks during the 2020 outreach efforts, followed by a summary of the changes we've made to the plan, and lastly, next steps for finalizing the plan. So just to provide a quick background, Connect the COSIDE is the San Mateo County Midcoast Comprehensive Transportation Management Plan. It's a plan to improve safety and mobility for residents, businesses, workers, and visitors of the Midcoast. It covers the topics of walking, biking, public transit, driving, and land use. So Connect the COSIDE will create an overall vision for transportation on the Midcoast, and it will priorities for future investments in transportation. And once this plan is approved and adopted, it will help us go out and apply for funding to make the projects in the plan a reality, since having an adopted plan is often a requirement for grant resources. So just quickly, some of the major goals of Connect the Coast Side are to improve existing and future traffic conditions on the Midcoast, increase opportunities for walking, biking, and riding transit, to respect the character of the Midcoast and protect its coastal and environmental resources, and to improve access to those coastal resources. And all these goals are in the plan if you want a more thorough review. And just quickly, the plan focuses on the mid-coast areas surrounding Highway 1 and Highway 92, including the unincorporated communities of Montera, Moss Beach, El Granada, Princeton, and Miramar. So the initial stimulus for Connect the Coast Side came out of the Midcoast Local Coastal Program update back in 2012. And this update called for the development of a comprehensive transportation management plan to address the cumulative traffic impacts of development on roads and highways in the Midcoast. The Connect the Coast Side project started back in 2014. And over the next few years, the project team produced several reports that looked at future development on the Midcoast, analyzed current and future transportation deficiencies, made recommendations for transportation improvements. And in 2019, staff was worked to put together a complete draft of the plan. And the public draft of the plan was released last year in January 2020. And during last summer and fall, we heard your feedback on that draft. And then we used your input to create this new update of the plan. And last week, we released the final administrative draft for review. So just quickly, hearing input from the people who live, work, and visit the Midcoast has been a very important part of creating this plan. Last year, we used a variety of methods to connect with people and to hear your priorities, including 3 virtual meetings, surveys, posting videos about the plan, updating the website with information and a comment box, attending multiple Midcoast Community Council meetings, Spanish language outreach, and 2 youth group meetings. We collected a ton of comments from this outreach, and we reviewed and summarized all those comments in our 2020 outreach summary report. So here's a word cloud from all those comments we collected. Some major themes we heard. A big one is traffic, and that was in fact one of the most used words in the comments that we received. Traffic is a big issue on the coast. We definitely recognize that. We also heard concerns over future development, and we heard that existing conditions make it difficult for people to walk, bike, and take transit. And we also heard a lot of support for projects that make those things safer and easier. And some of the more specific suggestions that we heard about updating the plan were things like increasing the plan's readability and legibility, adding more context to the plan, including on topics like the Midcoast setting, the environment, sustainability, emergency response, and evacuation, clarifying the transportation and land use analyses and what they mean, providing more detail on land use policies and their implementation, providing more transportation projects that focus on safety, like safe routes to school, removing projects with a high environmental impact, like a park and ride lot, and giving more details on next steps for the plan's implementation and timeline. All right, and now I'm going to turn it over to Chanda to talk a little bit about the changes that we've made to the plan.
Thanks, Katie. So I'm going to go ahead and kick us off on the summary of plan changes based on the key themes and changes requested that Katie just went over. Next slide. So to enhance the plan's readability and legibility, we worked on rearranging it and breaking it out into more distinct sections, including adding a separate executive summary. We also added more tables, figures, maps, and photos to sort of help break it up and hopefully clarify things. We added more background information with web links and excerpts from other documents that aim to help the reader of the plan understand the context of the information. Next slide. There's been a lot of past planning work that's already happened on the Midcoast, and the Midcoast is a really distinct area of the county, and we heard that from all the stakeholders. So we worked hard to try to add more context and framing, as Katie mentioned, into the plan in a few different places. Those include having a separate introduction with descriptions of the Midcoast, its character, community demographics, and travel behavior data, an updated planning and policy context chapter and appendix with references to past efforts, more information on sea level rise and coastal erosion, and revised goals and objectives to address sustainability, the environment, the importance of all ages and abilities access, and more background on other efforts that can help advance the vision and goals of the plan. Next slide. Stakeholders also had questions about both the transportation and land use analyses, and some pointed out inconsistencies in the plan across the tables. So we took a deep dive into the data and in response clarified the different land use forecasts that were used in a separate land use chapter, including discussion about Half Moon Bay's recent local coastal program land use update. We expanded the sections on transportation and standards and performance to help clarify what the measures mean. We revised the transportation analysis data tables for accuracy in the calculations, and we also provided some additional context setting for the transportation data by including some pre-COVID pandemic counts at key locations for comparison with the 2014 data used for the analysis, and some building permit data issued from 2015 to 2020 to show the pace of recent development on the Midcoast. Next slide. So now I'll talk a little bit more about the plan's recommendations and specifically on infrastructure to start. We added more detail to the new Chapter 7 recommendations and added more on, for each individual project, the description, including a rationale for why it's in the plan. We checked each project for consistency with other relevant plans, since many of Connect the Coastside's recommendations are based on all those past planning studies. And we reviewed and revised the planning level cost estimates. This section is still organized by mode of travel at most impacts, like pedestrian, transit, roadway, but there is overlap since the roadway project could also include pedestrian infrastructure. So now I'll go into some more changes about the January 2020 draft to January 2021. So based on the feedback that we received, we added new projects to the plan. This is a list of the roadway and pedestrian projects with the project numbers there for reference, if you'd like to look at the plan. Under roadway, we added a new project from the Highway 1 Safety and Mobility Study, which was to add turn and acceleration lanes on Highway 1 at 8th Street in Montera. For pedestrian, we heard a lot of feedback about the challenges in walking on the Midcoast and a lack of facilities. So we augmented Project PE1 crossings to, add an overcrossing of Highway 1 at Carlos Street to connect the coastal trail to the parallel trail. We put in improvements to make pedestrians more visible and complete the crossings at Coronado Street, and improving the crossing at Virginia Avenue to add an overhead or rapid flashing beacon. We also identified the need to complete sidewalks on California Avenue and Etheldorf Street and Moss Beach, where there's an existing gap between sidewalks, and at commercial areas that front Highway 1 in Moss Beach and Montera. And lastly, we heard a lot of support for Safe Routes to School, so we added a recommended project to complete sidewalk, stop signs, and bikeways on the way to Farallon View based on a previous Safe Routes to School walk audit effort that was done for that elementary school. Next slide. This is just a map of the proposed improvements for the Montera Safe Routes to School project. It's also in the plan. Next slide. We added a new project to add short-term bicycle parking throughout the Midcoast, since safe and secure bike parking is an important piece of completing any trip by bike. And we've added recommendations for increased transit service with a recreational shuttle that travels up and down Highway 1 in the Midcoast from BART and Caltrain, and increased Midcoast bus service with buses that go directly to Colma BART during commute times, and a plan to reduce the wait time between buses for Route 17.
Oh, damn.
Next slide.
Damn.
This is a map of the preliminary bicycle parking needs. Next slide.
I don't know, Peter. I wasn't in the bathroom.
Mute you, Cherie. So in addition to adding new projects based on feedback, we work to revise projects to better meet needs. So these include making the extents for the Village and Fringe Highway 1 shoulder treatments match the Highway 1 safety and mobility study, revising the Carlos Street traffic calming project to remove the bus stop that was recommended in the January 2020 draft and the rerouting of the bus line, and removing the specificity about the type of traffic calming that's part of that project. We've also added a recommendation to add in parallel parking on Carlos, south of California. We've maintained a preference for roundabouts on Highway 1 at California, Cypress, and 16th, pending, of course, future detailed design and outcome of the intersection control evaluation process. We've also removed the roundabout recommendations on Highway 92, and instead for the lower are recommending improving that existing signal for pedestrian and bicycles, and revising, adding a signal to the upper location. We've also added more locations for Highway 92 left turn lanes. Next slide. Similarly for bikeways, we revised the Highway 92 recommendation to Class 3 bikeway with widened shoulders. So we're not planning to add Class 2 there, which are bike lanes. The Capistrano Road bikeway is also similar, will be largely Class 3, will not be widened. And Airport Street, that recommendation was expanded to also include connections to Cypress Avenue with a preference for our Class 1 path, because we heard a lot about challenges walking along Airport. And we've included an El Granada Safe Routes to School project that incorporates the original Coronado Street and Obispo Road sidewalk recommendation, and adds more missing sidewalk to that project to get kids to Wilkinson School and El Granada Elementary School, in addition to intersection improvements. And lastly, in this, we also refined the alignment of the coastal trail south of First Street. Next slide. And just for an example, here's the recommended alignment of the coastal trail. And we've incorporated discussion also in the plan for the need for future studies to address sea level rise and erosion for this. Next slide. And lastly, we also removed a few projects, as Katie alluded to, some projects people had concerns about. So we took out the Highway 92 passing and climbing lanes. The Montero State Beach parking lot improvements that were recommended, I think have already been completed. The repaving has already happened. And the El Granada diagonal parking was also removed, since this is going to be largely influenced by any highway improvements or realignment, as well as the park and ride at Etheldor Street. And so with that, I'll turn it over to Katie to continue. Thanks.
Thanks. All right, so in addition to our revised infrastructure projects, we also added recommendations for future planning studies. So for example, a future study for parking at Surfers Beach and Princeton is something we're recommending due to some of the complications of different things going on there. And we are also recommending planning studies to look at the issues along Highway 1 and the coastal trail that are at risk due to sea level rise and coastal erosion. And we want to study that a bit further to come up with the best solutions for the community. We've also updated some of the sections on land use policies to include lot merger policy language, and to specify that the lot retirement program will be based on the outcomes of the lot merger program. And we updated the preliminary calculations for the transportation impact mitigation fee program based on the revised project list. And we expanded that discussion to include next steps required to enact the fee. We've also made a range of other changes, things like including programmatic approaches, for example, educational campaigns to reduce speeding. We have also recommended updates to the local coastal program and have a recommendation for reporting the status of Connect the Coast Side implementation every 5 years. We discuss existing and related efforts led by the county as well. So including things like the local hazard mitigation plan, which the county has just started to update, which studies and recommends projects to mitigate risks from hazards, because that's something we heard a lot about in outreach. So we want to let you know that that other effort is happening. So Connect the Coast Side also lays out how projects in the plan will be implemented. So when county staff and partners start to work on implementing these projects, that work will include more community engagement, detailed project design, looking at the available rights of way for the project, any utility conflicts, and a lot more. And through that more detailed review, we might find out that some projects that seem feasible now may ultimately not be feasible once we kind of get into those weeds of design. And that's all part of the process of putting together improvements like these. Lastly, we included a general implementation timeline of when we expect key phases of projects to begin. This timeline is based on factors like existing safety concerns, available resources, ongoing operations and maintenance costs, and other things. So we also included a list of early actions that we feel county planning and building staff will be able to help lead in collaboration with other actors like Caltrans and other county departments. So ultimately, Connect the Coast Side is a long-range plan, and as conditions change, implementation actions and timelines could also change, and we'll adjust and adapt as needed. All right, next steps. So some of our next steps include a Planning Commission workshop on February 10th. We have also talked about a second MCC meeting on February 24th. And then after we receive feedback from this round of outreach, we would take some time to update the plan and environmental documents in March and April. And then we hope to publish the final draft in May. After that, we would take it back to the MCC, the City of Half Moon Bay, and the Planning Commission for those bodies to all make final recommendations on the plan. And then the last stop would be the Board of Supervisors, likely in July, and they would be the entity that would adopt and approve the plan. And at that point, it would be final. All right, I want to thank you all for listening. We're here to answer questions and to hear any comments you have. And of course, you can also email us any questions or comments you have, and visit the Connect the Coast Side website to read the plan and for more information. All right, thank you.
Thank you so much, Katie, Shonda, and Joe. Let's start by going around the council for any clarifying questions. Does anyone on the council have a question? If so, please go ahead and raise your hand. Okay, let's go with Greg first.
I'm sorry, I'm having bandwidth problems. I hope you can hear me. I'd like to thank Joe and Katie and Chandra for listening, because it's apparent that issues the community raised on a number of things, land use, funding, growth capacity, evacuation, among others, have been heard. And I appreciate their professionalism in the face of what was an animated set of community reactions and their responsiveness. And I think there are bits of this plan that I believe will benefit the coast side. I guess my major question is to the council: how are we going to come together with our comments on the things we like about this plan and the things that we still think are problematic? I think it's obvious to everybody the world has changed with a once in 100-year pandemic while this plan was being developed for, the last number of years. So I won't go into any detailed comments or questions, but just to the council, how are we going to handle this to come up with an integrated response?
Thanks, Greg. I'll answer quickly what I was thinking, and then we can talk more about that under future agendas. But so we have tonight this introductory presentation from the team that's developed this draft, and you know, I think this is like it's a very long document, so obviously we have to have time to really digest it. And so we'll have multiple meetings on this. So I have planned, we can talk about this later, but I have planned to have the team come back and present in more detail on the February 24th meeting. And then I think we will have to have a subset of the council go together and create a comment letter that we will then have on a future agenda, probably one of the agendas in March. So that's how I was thinking about going forward. Hopefully that'll be enough time to provide feedback, to get comprehensive information and in terms of what different members of the community and the council think about this, and then provide feedback by that time. Okay. Next, let's go to Len.
Thank you. Again, as Michelle said, and Greg, it was a very thorough presentation and a lot of study behind it. Most of the detailed questions and issues will probably come up in later meetings, but I just wanted to pose one specific and one larger level issue. In Moss Beach, you talked about a crosswalk or crossing with a RFB device there. Caltrans has already come to us and said they will be installing such a device in March. And so how does that fit in with your plan? I assume that's at no cost to the community, but Caltrans is doing it. Could you put that project in context? And then at the end, does the Coastal Commission have any role once the Board of Supervisors approves this?
So thanks, Len. I'll start. Sorry, apologies, was unaware that Caltrans was putting in the RFB, I'm guessing at Virginia, at the existing Mark Crossing. Is that correct? So anyway, so
yes.
we'll have to update the plan to reflect that that's happening. If there are other comments around, you know, we've made some statements in the plan around the additional infrastructure that might be needed to make crossings of the highway safer in the long term, like references to the Highway 1 Safety Mobility Study. But so we'll update the plan to reflect that that's going in, and apologies for not knowing that and getting that earlier. I'm going to punt your question about the Coastal Commission to Joe.
You're mute, Joe.
Yeah, so thank you, Len. The Coastal Commission review of this plan is as yet unclear. We certainly will be engaging them in the plan and getting their feedback on it as we move to complete it. And so we want to understand what their comments and concerns are before we go forward to decision makers with a final recommendation. And then we know that we need to make some changes to the local coastal program to implement this plan, because there are new standards in the plan that must be integrated, into the LCP for us to be able to implement this. And so those are the sort of, there's policy changes that are outlined in the plan that we see that need to be integrated into the LCP. And we'll be engaging the Coastal Commission on ensuring that any concerns that they have are reflected in the plan.
Thanks, Joe.
Thank you. Any other questions, clarifying questions from members of the council before we go to public comment? Okay, I don't see anything. Let's go to public comment then, starting with Sid Young. Sid,
Thank you.
There you go.
I'm sorry, it took me 2 taps to get me to unmute. Joe, thank you. Last time you gave us some updates, a lot of it was not funded. So I'm wondering what portion is funded now, or what, if any, of the Connect the Coast Side projects.
So none of, I mean, there are some projects that are already in process that are part of Connect the Coast Side, like for example, the Graywell Cove Crossing, and the turn lanes there. So those are partially funded, but almost all the projects in Connect the Coast Side don't have dedicated funding now. So the next step, sort of as outlined in the implementation chapter and the early action items, is, we are going to focus on trying to seek grant resources and figure out if there are other internal sources to implement projects that are currently challenges right now. So there are existing problems. There also will be future problems. So that's sort of our plan right now.
Well, I don't understand why they let the Gray Whale Cove jump ahead of everything when this thing's been on the burner since 2002.
Well, I
that's
think
a statement, not a comment. And I know it's not your fault. It's very upsetting though, because that's going to cost quite several $1 million, I understand. So the next
project, I was just going to say, like, I think what's really, the project delivery process and sort of getting funding for projects is a really long process. And so had this plan been finished sort of, a while ago, maybe we would have had more time to start seeking funding now. But now that we're getting closer, hopefully, we'll be able to sort of get started. And the county's already been working on lots of these safety issues. So I know it's frustrating to not always have the order that maybe is hoped and expected for.
Okay, well, I don't need to hear about that because I live in Seal Cove and I'm going in and out of the Cypress entrance and exit, which is already at a LOF or whatever they call it, level of service F. So, the fact that they've fast tracked the stupid crosswalk or whatever it is down on the highway where we're getting all this tourist traffic, yet here we are still waiting and waiting for anything to happen at Cypress. Anyway, the only other question I have right now is what time is the community workshop? I think you said it was on the 11th.
The Planning Commission workshop?
Okay, Planning Commission workshop.
It's on February 10th.
The 10th, I'm sorry. What time though?
I think the Planning Commission meeting starts at 9. Is that right?
Okay, thank you so much.
I actually don't know.
Okay, that's all right. That's good. Thanks.
Thank you, Sid. Next, let's go to Chris Johnson.
Thanks, Michelle. Okay, so I'm trying to stay at the high level here because as somebody mentioned, it's a really long document and it's just almost impossible to talk about real details. But so I guess the first question, and I will admit, like I feel I've always been a little confused by this. So maybe Joe can answer this for me, which he's probably already answered several times for me. I always understood Connect the Coast Side to be more of a long-term project, almost a menu of potential solutions that are then in the quiver for things that come up over the future. But it feels like it's being presented here as like a specific list of projects that's going to happen, boom, boom, boom. As the first question, could someone just set me straight on that again, please?
So there are certain projects that are in the plan because they are triggered by a projected deficiency. But there are projects in the plan that we've heard from the community over and over again that are safety concerns right now. And one of the things that we heard was there was a need to sort of lay out in more detail how the county was going to act moving forward to pursue these projects. So it is a long range plan. The timeline that we have in there is over 30 years. But a lot of the challenges the community faces are current challenges that have nothing to do with future development. They're challenges now, safety issues. So that's sort of why we've gone into some general specificity. I know that's not necessarily helpful, but trying to be a little bit more specific about how we plan to act moving forward.
Thank you, Chandra. I just think it's important for people to understand that, because I know in years past when Connect the Coast Side has been discussed, people come away feeling great. We're going to get an overpass at, wherever. But that's not really what this document is saying. Okay, so then the next major question I have relates to this schedule of projects, which is the funding, which I've complained about this before, and the Gray Whale Cove project is, in my opinion, a great example of my negativity on this. And that is that none of these projects have dedicated general fund funding. They're all grant chasing projects. And that means that sometimes the grants don't come through and these projects don't happen. Or part of a project, we've been waiting on the parallel trail connector for years now, because we just can't line up the grants to get this thing done. So the funding to me is still not there. It's not dedicated. And so it just leaves me feeling like, you know what? I saw a lot of these exact same plans in a document titled 1980 that seemed real exciting, all the same trails and plans. And here we are in 2021. The last question I have, I guess that wasn't a question, thank you. The last question I have though is, and Len already brought up an example, most of these roadways are controlled by Caltrans. And we have been having a humongous problem out here with Caltrans and the county not being on the same page. I specifically point to the crosswalk that Len mentioned as an example of something that we spent 10 years here with the county trying to get something there. And then Caltrans literally overnight slapped some paint on there and claims to know nothing about they didn't look at a single plan. They know nothing about what we did. How are any of these projects going to happen when we have our past relationship, the county's past relationship with Caltrans has been failed at best? I also point to the detour at Meadow Creek Bridge. It took 6 weeks to get K-Rail out on Highway 1 because we couldn't get the permit from Caltrans. So how are any of these projects going to happen when we have a partner like Caltrans that apparently there's no communication between these two entities? Thank you, and I appreciate the time. Thank you.
Sure. So just to respond to your last comment on coordination with Caltrans, and I think we have recently started having regular meetings with them, and we had a meeting in October to go over in depth with Caltrans staff the projects in Moss Beach in particular. So it is something that we're trying to work on. It's obviously a long process. They're a huge entity. So, but they are very much aware of Connect the Coast Side and its recommendations. And we have a meeting with them actually next week where we'll be talking about the plan more specifically. To your point though, most of these projects are dependent upon Caltrans coordination, Caltrans approval. We tried to make that really clear in the plan, talking about the PSRPS, PID process. So, it's going to take effort, and I think that's why we've laid out the early actions that we have. What we think as planning staff we can take on to start moving towards that direction of a more coordinated approach.
Thank you, Chandra. I appreciate the answer.
And by the way, my name is Chanda, not Chandra. Throwing it out there.
I'm sorry. I literally mispronounced my own name, so I'm so sorry about that. My apologies.
Okay, great. Let's go next to Michelle Dragony.
I just was going to post I just posted in the chat about Gray Whale Cove, and you guys were at the retreat. Supervisor Horsley was pretty clear that he doesn't want to fund it. He doesn't see the county spending $2.1 million funding a crosswalk to nowhere. Gray Whale Cove is not ADA accessible, and everybody on the coast side want it because it will affect our traffic on Double Slide. So that's the feedback from the coast side and from Supervisor Horsley, and I hope you listen. Thank you.
Thank you for that. Chanda, or did anyone want to respond?
Yeah, I can respond real quickly. I believe, and I think Lena may still be here, but I believe that Supervisor Horsley's reticence to move forward with the Graywell Cove project comes from a concern that Caltrans wants to require that the county maintain, well, two things. You brought up the handicapped accessibility design requirements, which do add costs to the project. And the second is that Caltrans is in a process of, in some cases, abandoning their two-lane highways from an investment standpoint. And one of the ways they're doing that is passing on, anytime a local government makes improvement on a two-lane highway like Highway 1, the improvement then, the maintenance responsibility is they pass it on to the local government. And that's not an insignificant cost. And so we're negotiating with Caltrans over that. So I believe that's why he's not moving forward with it right now, not because he doesn't support the project.
Okay, thank you for that response, Joe. Catherine Slater Carter. You're muted if you're trying to speak, Catherine.
Yeah, I was trying to unmute, and I thank you very much for holding this meeting, and thank you to all the folks from the community who have participated in this. I admit I dropped out for a few years and followed and worked on the local coastal program update until 2013. So I have some questions concerning that. But first, I heard you say you're having a special meeting with Caltrans. I would request, please, that you have a special meeting with the general managers of Montera Water and Sanitary District, Granada Community Services District, and Sewer Authority Midcoast side. There are public utility easements that are going to be under all of the improvements. And they have, we just replaced the pipe. We've worked with Caltrans, we worked on the county on old pipes that need replacing and have been replaced, and it gets to be very, very expensive. So I think one of the things that needs to be done before this gets too much into the final design is to talk to the special districts, because it's the ratepayers who pay for these things. In Montera, the $1 million project to replace the pipe under the highway was paid by 1,500 account holders. So you can see how it gets stretched out over time, and it can be a real cumulative problem. So please get in touch. I see you've got some names on your front piece on people you consulted with, but I think this is a very good time to reconnect with Chuck Duffy from Granada, Clemens Heldmeyer from Montera, and Keishan Pradvidi from Sewer Authority Midcoast side. I also think something that should be worked into this, and it was a concern of the community years ago, and I believe it still is this would be an opportunity when things are happening to underground our electrical utilities, particularly along the highway. They're somewhat of an eyesore. So that's one way to look at it. But the other way is that it's a safety issue. There are parts of Montera right now that have been without power for quite a while. And there are special needs folks and all kinds of folks. And I'm not suggesting that you would be undergrounding the wires back in the back of Montera, but certainly where these improvements are being made along Main Street is one, and along the highway is another. So I think that needs to be considered. Then I have one quick question before I launch into the bigger one. And what date is it going to be too late for the community to suggest changes to this program? Since it's going to be going to the Board of Supervisors in, I think you said July. When can the Midcoast Council and the community, what's the sort of the deadline for us getting in, for our planning purposes, for us to get our comments to you?
Yeah, so I can just jump in with that one. First of all, I think all your suggestions are great. I think it's a good idea for us to check in with the special sewer districts right now. We have presented to the Montara district in the past. So thank you for that. And as far as comments go, ideally in our schedule, I think we'd want to try and have all comments by the end of February. And then we would take those comments and, we need some time to synthesize them, review them, and then use them to make any updates to the plan. And we have that scheduled out for March and April. So ideally, if the month of February and the last few days of January would be when we'd be collecting these last comments in order to finalize the plan.
Thank you. And my last comment is on the 2013 local coastal program on page 1.6 in planning and development. It has some build out numbers, and I was looking at the numbers that are used in this study, and they exceed the highest number estimate for the 2013 local coastal program. So I'm wondering why that changed. Also, we've got the census, and I'm sure that Supervisor Horsley has access to information early. And he said that the population on the mid-coast is about 13,000. Now you're talking about adding 700 houses or so to what, and I'm not sure on that number, I should have written it down, but anyway. I'm wondering what the growth potential of all of these road improvements is to our population, and also what the population really is here as opposed to the population, estimated population per household. Because I know many houses have extra people living in them, and it may have to do with COVID right now, but in the past it's had to do with the cost of housing. So I'm not sure what our population really is. And I think
Thank you,
that's
Catherine. Yeah, you've
that's
gone a
important.
lot over your 3 minutes.
Thank you.
So
The other thing
thank
I
you for
want,
those questions, and we'll let
the other thing I want to know real quickly is what your priority projects are, because you've got this long list. And so for deciding what comes first, could you please do a chart that says what the priorities are? Thank you.
So that's in table 34.
Are you guys able to respond to our other question?
Yeah, I can jump in. I think the reason that some of the numbers between the land use analysis for the local coastal program and Connect the Coastside are different is just that they were two different analyses, and I believe that the one for Connect the Coastside is in the range of what was put in the local coastal program, and it was just that at the time they took a new look at it, and they needed some more kind of different specific information. Basically for the traffic analysis, we needed numbers by traffic analysis zones, TAZs. So I think that's just why they had to redo it again, but they are within the same range. And then I don't know if there was another question that we missed there.
I think the other question was on the census data, and I actually believe that the numbers that Supervisor Horsley were citing of 13,000 people in the unincorporated Midcoast and 12,000 in Half Moon Bay were from public census information from a couple years ago. One of the, I can't remember exactly, it was the 2017 or 2018 update. I don't think that is from the newest census, but I can't be sure where he got his source.
No, it is indeed from the 2018 estimated updates that the census publishes.
Great, thanks, Dave. Okay, let's go to JQ Oswine.
Yeah, hi. My question was regarding the development forecasts. When you looked at, for example, at the maximum build out, and I know you had to do that based on the way the LCP is currently worded, and that's rather unfortunate since it's not really that useful. But I also noted that the only things were mitigated that were mitigated using the recommended projects were the roundabouts. In looking at table 30, for example, you also mentioned though that you added that some of the changes to the plan were that you added a constrained development forecast to project the amount of potential development in the mid-coast in the year 2040. But you didn't actually add that analysis. It's nowhere in the plan that I can find. And I'm wondering if you did include that, if those mitigations that you're proposing would actually take care or would be met, at least in that constrained development forecast. So could you comment on that?
I'm not sure. So the table that we have is using a more conservative version of the build out forecast, uses maximum versus constrained. I'm not totally sure. I guess maybe you could reframe your question for me.
Well, the maximum build out, of course, is if you develop every single lot that's on the books. And that's obviously never going to happen. And you, of course, you mentioned that in the plan. And you did say that you were going to add a constrained development forecast, which basically looks at adding 40 units per year up to the year 2040, which is much less development than the maximum build out. Right. But that analysis is not included, even though you say you did include it.
So we do have the development numbers for the constrained forecast in there. And, you know, that was added after the original build out forecast was done, because we heard from the community that, you know, they wanted to understand what a more realistic forecast would be to 2040. So we did include that. But, you know, part of the requirement of the local coastal program that launched this plan was that we look at, you know, land use under build out and how that would affect traffic. So that's the ultimate, those are the ultimate numbers we use to create the traffic analysis. And the constrained numbers are to add more context. And also they were used as part of the traffic impact mitigation fee calculations. So I hope that helps explain it a little bit.
I'm sorry it doesn't, because I do not see those numbers included. I've gone through the plan several times looking for that constrained development forecast numbers, and I can't find them. Okay. So if you could point me to those specific sections, I would appreciate it.
Yeah, let me pull up those page numbers and I can chat you or email you.
All right.
Jake, I think it was page 182.
Which for what? What are you referring to?
For the constrained development.
Can we just let them forward the numbers to them?
Yeah, that's not what I'm talking about. Those are just numbers. Those numbers don't really help. What I'm wondering is, if you look at specific projects that are recommended, how are those mitigations met in the constrained development forecast? Are they met by the mitigations that you propose? That's what I'd like to see.
We don't have a mitigated, we don't have a unmitigated or mitigated analysis using the constrained development forecast. All of the transportation analysis was done using the maximum build out, the maximum build out forecast.
Okay.
So what the constrained development forecast was used for was the transportation impact mitigation fee calculation.
And only that. Okay. All right. I'll have to look at that again to figure that out, but I still think it would be valuable to look at the actual projects and whether they actually mitigate the concerns that we have in a more realistic forecast of growth.
Thanks, JQ, for that feedback.
You're welcome.
Okay. That looks like all of the public comments. So let's close public comment on this item. I do want to go around the council and have everyone have a chance to speak and, you know, give their thoughts on what they've seen so far, and even with reference to, you know, what they would like to see, what they still have questions about, or what they'd like to see more of at the next meeting. Let's go ahead and start with Len.
Thank you. So I have just one very specific request to tie to this last pair of discussions, requesting information on priorities. You have priorities that fall in the 20-year range, and those occupy a lot of important attention for longer range planning. I'm concerned about the 5-year priorities, and you've already indicated that you really view this as a 5-year cycle with review, which I think is a good idea. When you come back on the 24th, it would be very helpful if, starting on the page 96, which is the first of the community diagrams and identifies projects, if for each of those 5 communities, you could identify what you feel the 5-year priorities might be. I'm not saying you're experts on it, but it will give us a very specific starting point. So that would be the request I would give you that I think could make our meeting on the 24th very productive. That's it.
Okay, thanks, Len. Next, let's go to Dave.
Well, I'm going to shock everybody by not complaining. I want to say everybody in planning who's worked on this, I have to admit I've not read the full draft yet. I've skimmed it in a couple of places and read the summary, and the summary shows that you have listened to a lot of conflicting requests and requirements, and in my opinion have done an excellent job of adapting to those in a rational fashion. So I'm very, very appreciative of the work that has been done on that. I may still have complaints after I read the actual draft, but thank you all very much. And that's all I have to say right now.
Thanks, Dave. Next, let's go to Claire. She didn't raise her hand, but I'm going around the council, and you can choose not to speak if you don't have anything to say right now.
Well, I don't have a lot to say, but I do appreciate all the work, as Dave mentions. I'm also kind of taking this as an overall master plan and not too specifically, because my guess is that some of these ideas are going to be changed by the amount of development or non-development that we have, and that we'll get a chance to address specific things when they come up in the future. Is that generally true?
Yes, that's true.
Thank you.
Thanks, Claire. Next, let's go to Dan.
Yeah, I just wanted to, the next meeting on this, is you said the 24th? Is that what you said, Len?
That's what I said.
And
yes.
Can we just review that again, please? I'm sorry. Where exactly will it be?
Oh, so there are a couple meetings, actually. There's a planning commission meeting, I believe.
One on the 10th, right? The workshop on the 10th.
And then we'll have this as a topic again on the MCC agenda for the February 24th.
Okay. Yeah, listen, I'm sorry. Hey, thanks, County, for all the work. I'm sure you got great intentions and all that, but this has been an enormously tiring process, wearing myself, and I'm certain many members of the community over all this time. And I'm seeing that the administrative draft was now almost 200 pages. It's really knocking people out of following this. I'm going to give it a lot of attention more, and I'm going to have some more some more statements down the road. But yeah, I'm just going to be real short that, I just, on the record, I just haven't been really pleased with the whole process, and, how much it weighs on the community. Thank you.
Okay, thanks, Dan. Let's go to Jill next.
I would like to thank all of you for your work on this document. It is quite large, and it's very well written. I've read it in the last day, and it's not too difficult to read, but it does have so much information that I'll have to read it a couple more times to really understand it. I would echo Len and Catherine Slater Carter in asking for a list of priorities. I think that would be really important to see. Thank you.
Thanks, Jill. And then let's go to Greg.
Well, I already thanked him, so I won't repeat that. I'm sorry, Chanda, for mispronouncing your name. My concern is that there are going to be a lot of thoughts that we have to bundle together to get back to the county by the end of February. And I don't know how we do this without violating the Brown Act, but in a week or so, I will be prepared to give you 22 things to think about. And I don't know how to distribute that without violating the Brown Act to the other members of the council so that we can all pool our thoughts together, send it to the county, and they can come back on February 24th and comment on it. But pretty clearly, they want to have their comments by the end of February. So I'll leave that to others to sort out. But the world changed a lot during the course of the preparation of this document. So unfortunately, I think we have to take a look at what life is going to be like post-COVID. That may help alleviate some of the traffic problems. I don't know.
Okay, thanks, Greg. Yeah, and I'll just quickly say, yeah, I really appreciate all the work that's been put into this. It's clear that you guys made a lot of changes since the last draft and that you really did hear a lot of the community feedback. Yeah, we'll discuss during future agendas how exactly we're going to handle that. And we'll probably take a group of us that are going to focus in on the draft and review it. I haven't had a chance to fully review it, but I think, most of us will take a lot of time to really fully digest everything that's in it. But thank you for coming tonight and for the presentation. And we look forward to having you back again at the end of February.
Thank you.
Thank you very much.
Thank you. Okay, next let's move on to item 4C, which is the Elk Granada Fire Station lighting. We're going to have, I think Jill is going to present a quick slideshow, and then we have a letter to review. The letter is also posted on the website. Jill, you want to take it over?
Okay, so help me out here. Do I first make a motion to approve the draft letter?
No, let's go through the presentation first, I believe, and then we'll do the clarifying questions and the public comment, and then we'll make a motion. So you can go ahead and get started with your presentation. Do you have administrative rights to present? I think Dave will need to give that to you unless you sent the presentation to
I
him.
do, and I've never done this, so let's do it. Here we go. Let's see. Okay. You.
Yep, we can see it. Perfect.
Can you see it?
Yes.
Excellent. Okay. This slide shows Fire Station 41, and on the bottom left is the old fire station, and on the top right is the rendering for the new fire station from the final environmental impact report. So I'm going to go through the letter, and I hope everyone's had a chance to read it. If not, it's on the website. So on July 19th, 2017, the San Mateo County Planning Commission approved the construction of this new fire station. It's on an undeveloped parcel zoned El Granada Gateway in an unincorporated area of El Granada. So it's located approximately 300 feet north of the Pacific Ocean. If you can look in the picture, there's two yellow pins. The one to the left is the new fire station and the one on the right is the old. So the new fire station is bounded by 4 streets: Avenue Alhambra to the north, Coronado Street to the east, Obispo Road to the south, and Avenue Portola to the west. So this new fire station replaced the existing fire station that I showed on the previous slide. Okay. Conditions of approval for the project were based on the adopted mitigation measures from the certified 2017 final environmental impact report, which took into consideration comments from residents to ensure lighting was in compliance with the San Mateo County Midcoast LCP, Local Coastal Program. This document from 2013 has a section 8.18, which requires that development blend with and be subordinate to the environment and the character of the area where located, and be as unobtrusive as possible and not detract from the natural open space or visual qualities of the area. This section also requires that exterior lighting be limited to the minimum necessary for safety, and that all lighting, both exterior and interior, be placed, designed, and shielded so as to confine direct rays to the parcel where the lighting is located. Oops, sorry. So the rendering on the right was not really a true representation of the final product. As you can see, it doesn't show any lighting at all. Comments from residents during the California Environmental Quality Act, the CEQA process, relayed that the neighbors were concerned that lighting would be a significant change, with one resident writing that backyard stargazing would no longer be an option, as the view facing the west-southwest, once previously nice and dark, would be significantly impacted by the lighting of this project. Another comment was the proposed Fire Station 41 will cause light pollution and will substantially damage scenic resources. A third comment said it would cause a significant aesthetic impact by having a substantial adverse impact on a scenic vista. It will substantially degrade the existing visual character of the neighborhood and its surroundings, and it will cause a new source of substantial light and glare, which will adversely affect nighttime views in the area. The final environmental impact report agreed with these comments from residents, stating potentially significant environmental impacts were determined to require analysis based on the initial study. These impacts would be mitigated to less than significant because the project would undergo design review for conformance with all policies of the San Mateo County LCP to ensure that design, character, height, scale, and mass is compatible with the area, and that the overall character of the site and surrounding area would not be substantially altered. This is indeed what happened, with the subsequent San Mateo County Planning Commission's letter of decision with final project approval requirements that the applicant shall meet the conditions of approval. And this is in attachment A of their final project approval letter. You can find that on the website. In addition, we also had a few comments from residents about wildlife impacts. This was also noted in the final environmental impact report. Regarding impacts to biological resources, the California Coastal Commission comment letter number A01 refers to a preliminary environmentally sensitive habitat area called ESHA. This analysis calls out the riparian corridor west and south of 555 Obispo Road as potential habitat excuse me, for the federally threatened California red-legged frog and the federal and state endangered, fully protected San Francisco garter snake. The lighting design should have taken this into consideration to limit spillover from the fire station to the adjacent riparian corridor, as this may cause a significant impact to protected species during their annual movement after the first winter rains. And we just had those first winter rains, and increase possible predation by avian and mammalian species, such as raccoons, coyotes, herons, egrets, cats, and foxes. In response to community outcry, representatives of the Midcoast Community Council conducted a field survey of the fire station lighting at 6 p.m. after dusk on January 12th, 2021. They confirmed residents' concerns and determined that the current lighting is excessive for the semi-rural location, especially on the southeast side. Having 5 approximately 40-foot tall light poles that obstruct the view from homeowners towards the Pacific Ocean and degrade the dark and night skies. Additional lighting includes 5 approximately 15-foot tall walkway landscaping poles, making the site, multiple wall sconces, base lighting for a nighttime flag illumination, and various other area lights, making the site reminiscent of an industrial area. Uh-oh, sorry. There it is. Post-construction comments from residents include, looks like a prison yard, or looks like a Walmart parking lot, or bright lights adversely impact wildlife, and additional, can the color be changed to amber to match the El Granada streetlights? This slide shows the fire station as it is today at night and the rendering that was presented to the public. The Midcoast Community Council has determined the new Fire Station 41 is in code violation of a condition of the approved project. Specifically, that the project does not conform with the requirements and standards of the San Mateo County Local Coastal Program, LCP, as described in the Coastal Development Permit, and has a significant impact on coastal resources, sensitive habitats, and visual resources in the area. This letter states, the Midcoast Community Council requests modifications to the light poles, modifications to the base lighting at the flagpole, and all other lighting to direct rays downward, to limit glare and restrict direct light to the property, as described in the conditions of approval, and a change to amber lighting to match the existing El Granada street lighting. Furthermore, we request review of any replacement lighting features prior to installation. Thank you.
Great, thanks, Jill. First, let's go around to the council and see if anyone on the council has any clarifying questions. I don't see any hands raised right now from members of the council. Okay, then let's open this up for public comment. We did receive several.
Michelle?
Yeah,
Michelle?
did you have a question or comment? Comment.
You know, there's 2 different versions of the Zoom now, and could you just go over? There's a lot of new people on. I don't think you did earlier. The 2 ways to raise your hand.
Well, I did earlier, but the two ways to raise your hand, it depends if you're on a desktop or mobile, but on a computer, at the bottom, there's a reactions button, and you can click on that, and there's a raise hand button right above that. In some older versions of Zoom, I believe it's still under the participants list. And if you're on mobile, it's on the more tab of your mobile phone. And all of this is actually written out in the agenda at the bottom of the agenda, so everyone should have instructions there. Let's go to, so we did receive a number of comments via email. I think we have some people who are here tonight who have also sent in public comments. So I'd actually like to have the public comments read, or the people that are here can speak. Let's see. Len, as chair, do you have, or as a secretary, are you available to read the comments that we received, or would you like me to do it? I wanted to start just in order of when we received the comments. First was Lenny Schultz. I don't see her with her hand raised. I can read it if you're not available to do that.
Why don't you go with the first one? I hadn't lined that up.
Okay, no problem. Let me pull it up too. Okay. Okay, so this was an email that we received. It's a bit long, but I'll try to read it quickly. So it says, hello, my name is Melanie Schultz. I'm a 30-year resident of El Granada. I'm requesting that the stadium-like lighting surrounding the new El Granada Fire Station on Obispo Road be brought into compliance with the San Mateo County Midcoast LCP 2013 Section 8.18 policy. The present exterior lighting is out of character and excessive for this semi-rural community. It is glaring, obtrusive, and I believe it creates an unsafe, distracting, and near blinding effect for some drivers entering El Granada from Highway 1, as well as drivers inside of the community within its direct vicinity. The SMC Building and Planning Commission, in a letter of decision for conditions of approval dated July 19th, 2017, stated that all exterior lighting shall be designed and located so as to confine direct rays to the subject property and prevent glare in the surrounding areas and rated dark sky compliant. I do believe that this excessive lighting problem, unless remedied, will most certainly negatively affect the property values of the homes directly in back of the fire station. While I do not believe that the negative effects of this lighting was intentional, I do believe this matter can be remedied, perhaps by lowering the lamp poles, adding hooding, shielding the light rays, etc. I ask that this problem be addressed and remedied as soon as possible. So that is our first comment. Our next one was from Janet Breyer. And hers is short. I'll just read that. I write regarding my concerns about the El Granada Fire Station lighting. I believe that the El Granada Fire Station lights must conform with the conditions of approval, and that from my viewpoint, the lighting is too bright and not the minimum necessary for safety. The whole project appears to be a statement to ego and is overwhelming, but the lighting is most disturbing. The place now looks like it should be a prison yard. I think the light poles do not need to be so high and definitely needs to be dimmed down and less obtrusive. We do not need so many lights. Some can simply have bulbs removed. The station is crazy bright and must be made to conform with applicable law. Please take action and your efforts are most appreciated. The next is from Karen Wilson. And really just she sent a longer thing, but we're gonna note just the last page, which says, okay, so she's quoting the page 36 of the design review guidelines. She says it's very important that the lighting meets the design review standards. We worked so hard 20 years ago working with the community to put together design standards that found widespread agreement and support of lighting being a key component. The prohibitive language in the conditions of approval reflects those standards. I fear it would set a terrible precedent moving forward for all commercial or industrial use and compromise the residential standards generally if the county does not strictly enforce what was imposed as a condition of approval for this project. Please have the lighting corrected to fit into the community character and permit requirements. Next is Deborah Lardy.
Yeah, two more, Deborah, and there's one from someone labeled music.
Yes. So did you want to read mine or should I continue?
Deborah's has some example points, but I think her action closing was, please take action in asking the county to step up and enforce the zoning requirements for lighting. One, all commercial permits should have a clause regarding lighting. I had to ask that it be added. In the case of my neighbor, when their permit was renewed, it should be enforced in the standard. Also, design review is approving fixtures that are not compliant. This should also be changed.
Thank you. And the last was, well, there's two more. One from Kim Hines.
Go ahead. I don't have that up.
Oh, hold on.
Oh, you're doing that
I
one?
believe that was the music one. Yeah, I'll just read that. As it relates to the fire station and future lighting on our coast side, I would like to advocate for all public lighting installed to be dark sky compliant and clearly shielded from residences. And lastly, it looked like Dave had one from Matthew Clark.
Yeah, Matthew was the first one to bring this issue to our attention as a council. And very briefly, he says, I've just read the letter and it's excellent to the point, and I think irrefutable. In the built project clearly does not meet the lighting requirements and restrictions that were part of the conditions of approval. He thinks that although attaching the conditions is good, quoting the relevant sections might have been better. So that's it.
Thank you. Okay, that's all the letters we received. It looks like we have several members of the public who would like to comment. So let's start with Cherie. or Sherry, sorry.
Hi, it's Cherie.
Great.
I live at the corner of Santa Ana and Coronado, or Alhambra and Coronado, directly in view of the fire department. And I have said to several of my neighbors, this is the same as living across from a shopping center. And I don't understand why they've gotten away with this. It's changed our nighttime view entirely. And I'm very appreciative of all of the comments that you've shared tonight. And I'm very thankful for Dan and for Jill to bring this to the attention of the council. It's changed our nighttime environment entirely. So that's my basic commentary. My husband is also here, and we're on the same headphones. If I could turn it over to him to make his comment, I would appreciate that. Thanks.
Yeah, go ahead. I'll reset the timer for 3 minutes for your husband and have him state his name at the beginning.
Hello. I'm Peter, Cherie's husband. I'd like to thank Jill for bringing up the EIR from the beginning, because that's something that I've referred to also, as is the policy 4.60 requires that exterior lighting in the scenic corridors be kept to a minimum, and where used, employ warm colors rather than cool tones, and shield the scenic corridor from glare. Well, as is, this is not true. It cannot be argued that the substantial degradation of the visual quality that Cherie referred to from our home, the quality and character with regard to the vicinity of the fire station and its own source of substantial light and glare have adversely affected day and nighttime view of the area. It cannot be argued. This is a cumulative impact to a scenic vista that we've enjoyed here for over 33 years from this home. So I'm just saying it cannot be argued. The fire department proposed safety and security, of course, and they told us on numerous occasions that it was going to be an attractive nighttime environment, that lights would be shielded and placed so as to prevent glare and reflection or intrusion onto neighboring areas, and that the lighting would be dark sky compliant. This is also not true. Lighting for paths and entranceways and maintaining the character, this is what they put in the EIR, to maintain the natural character of the beach and reduce nuisance to adjacent properties. It's almost funny because that is also not true. Substantial light and glare comes mainly from commercial areas, lights which are kept on at night. Further, because of the slope topography of the project, the site that the fire station is on, they say it was not likely that the lighting from the project would result in any significant impacts to day or nighttime views. That, that new landscaping would partially shield the lighting from the project site. And also, they said new lighting conditions are expected to be similar to existing conditions of the surrounding properties and to the existing Fire Station 41 site. That's the one that's north of where this one was constructed. All
Thank
proposed
you.
develop.
You've reached 3 minutes, so can you quickly wrap up?
I will do my best. I just wanted to say this is also not true. The lighting, anyway. So my very personal, I will wrap up. There's no question that low intensity lighting in the form of amber and not bright white light would be much, much more appropriate. Shields,
Okay,
especially
thank
at
you.
the south entry, the ones that exist right now are doing a very poor job at filtering light. I mean, just think of your own cell phones. It's blue light, and if you leave it on next to you at night, sleep is difficult. They've provided
Okay,
no
thank
attention.
you. Thank you so much. No, we really appreciate it. If you still have more to say,
Can I
we have
say
to
one more
give
thing?
everyone a chance to speak. Okay, one more thing.
One more thing, and I will shut up. I would love to disavow and remove all 25-foot high light standards. They are not a requirement. They're not necessary for this project. And I appreciate it. Thank you for letting me go over.
Yes, thank you for your comments. We appreciate that. And next, let's go to Catherine Slater-Carter. You'll have 3 minutes.
I will take very short amount of time. I want to tell everyone, including Pete, these are excellent points. This is such an educated community, and it is so impressive because this has been a problem for a long time, and if it isn't nipped soon, it will turn us into El Camino Real. So thank you, Jill, for writing a wonderful letter. I would suggest the addition of what Pete just said about making sure the light standards are very low, because they could put yellow lights on a 25-foot standard and it'll look like a used car lot. That's my only suggestion, and I just want to express my deep admiration for everybody, public and on the Midcoast Council, who participated in this. Thank you.
Thank you, Catherine. Next is Chris Johnson.
Thanks, Michelle. I'm a member of the Coastside Design Review Committee. I'm the El Granada representative, but I'm speaking as a private citizen right now. But I mention that because as the El Granada community representative since 2012, this is completely offensive for many of the reasons that people stated. But I think it's important to point out a couple of things here. One, if this had been a residential project, it would not have been approved because these lights would not have been allowed. And we would have requested manufacturer's cut sheets. And I bring that up because those manufacturer's cut sheets would indicate dark sky compliant. I bring this up because in the county's online permitting center, Axela, by the way, this project has not passed a final building inspection. It failed its last inspection on November 20th, 2020. So it has not passed final building inspection yet. But 3 times since 2017, the county planner asked specifically for the manufacturer's cut sheets for these lights. 3 times asked for it. And as far as I can tell, never got them. Never got them. One time she had to remind the person that the cut sheets you just sent me were the ones that we already have on file. So I'm not sure if that was intentional or not, but I also want to point out, and Jill showed one picture of a rendering. Right now, you cannot find one single plan, elevation, or drawing with an exterior lighting fixture for this project. Not the plans that are on the Fire Protection District's website. Those don't have a lighting sheet. Compare that with the Harbor Village RV Park that we just looked at a couple months ago. That has in its plan set a specific lighting sheet that specifies all the locations of the exterior lighting fixtures, their size, all the heights of the poles, all of that. This plan set that the public saw doesn't have that. I also, in that slide that Jill showed that had the rendering and the picture of the old station, you know what's not out in front of the old station? Any light fixture standards, none. So they're probably in the back, but none in the front. Somebody mentioned this is a project of hubris in the sense that those 20-foot walkway light poles serve no purpose whatsoever. So there are so many problems with this just on the lighting. And I would say to Jill and to Dan that maybe the only suggestions I would have for your letter, which I really appreciate, is mentioning that 3 times the planner asked for these manufacturer cut sheets indicating dark sky compliance. And as far as I can tell, still do not have them. Why is that? And how could this have been okayed if they don't have what they were asking for 3 different times? And then the last thing I want to say, they're not going to take those poles down. Okay, that's one of the things about this, though, that those poles are built. So what I suggest is asking for shields, that aftermarket shields that could be attached that will direct the light down to a specific, location on the site as the letter of acceptance stipulates. So if I've talked to many members of the community as the El Granada community representative of CDRC, and I can only apologize to them that the CDRC is currently trying to get county to give the CDRC purview over commercial and governmental projects to avoid this exact problem. And I have to say the county's kind of dragging their feet. So thank you very much for the opportunity to comment.
Thank you, Chris. Next, let's go to Michelle Dragony.
I just wanted to hang in there with you guys for the last 3 hours, just to reiterate that I think that Jonathan Cox is on top of it, and I recommend that you guys contact him tomorrow and see if he's telling the truth. I think he is. He seemed very convincing in the fire board meeting.
Thank you so much for sticking around to let us know that.
You guys are great.
Next, let's go to Steve Terry.
Yes, thanks, Michelle. Did my email come into you by chance about a half hour before the meeting
I did
started?
not see it.
Yeah, I don't think Google
Len or
likes me.
Dave, did you guys see that?
It was about a half hour before the meeting. I think Google didn't pass it through, but I'll just kind of hand wave. What I wanted to say was I might be echoing a little bit of statements that said earlier, but I just want to emphasize that 20 years ago, this is when we put this stuff together. And there are a lot of us, there are a lot of people in the community that worked on this and tried to come up with these residential standards. And part of those standards that we worked on so hard included the light requirement, that light could not come off the property. Exterior lighting had to be contained on the property. Now, that process actually was enormous, involved a lot of the community, and took 10 years. If you look at the residential standards now, you'll see that they were approved by Coastal Commission in 2010. So it's kind of a 10-year process. And we had a lot of stuff in there, a lot of community input. And that's why this one is so important, because if we don't go by what it says explicitly in the conditions of approval, that lighting must be restricted, exterior lighting must be restricted to the property, we're going to compromise that whole work that the community's been doing over years and decades. And that's partly what makes this important. And I think that language is probably put in there into this commercial project because of the effort that had been started to normalize, kind of as Chris was saying, to normalize the commercial standards to the residential standards. Now, I don't know where that's at, that effort is at, but I saw on the county website, it looks like in 2018, a lot of work was started to do that. And for some reason it stalled, but it'd be nice to hear where that's going now. And then lastly, what I'd like to say is this one condition of approval on the letter of acceptance, or whatever the name of this letter is called, on the letter of decision, this one condition was so blatantly not adhered to that one has to wonder if there's maybe other things that were not adhered to on the conditions of approval. There's 52 conditions of approval. Some of them are not relevant today, but a lot of them are. And so it might be worthwhile if maybe one or two members of the council, Midcoast Council, get with maybe the planner, Summer Burleson, and maybe go through them item by item and see that they are addressed or have been addressed or are being addressed. Because I suspect that maybe there's a lot that aren't, since this one was completely missed from top to bottom. Those are my comments. Thank you.
Okay, thank you.
One last thing, I do very much approve of the letter. I like the letter that was done. I very much like the letter. I thank Jill for that.
Michelle, quick interruption.
Sure.
Your email was treated as spam again by Gmail. I did forward it to the council, so they will have a chance to see it eventually.
Thank you, Dave. Google doesn't like me.
Okay, well, thanks for those comments. Next, let's go to Sid Young.
Hi. Actually, I drove by it before I heard it was going to be on the agenda, and it didn't look that bright to me, but I don't live near there. But I did want to mention one comment, and that is the night I turned in off of Highway 1 near Coronado there, and then onto Obispo Road, I realized that, you know, on a horrible sunny day, or even at dark night, they should have some kind of a flasher saying, you know, fire engines or something may be coming, because I mean, it's like gridlock out on Highway 1, and sometimes that whole intersection gets backed up as well. I don't live there, so I don't really know if they're having trouble already coming and going, but I think it would be a good warning to let passenger vehicles making that left turn like I did know that there might be a fire engine come racing out of there. So that's just my comment. I didn't see that lighting looked so bright to me when I happened to be passing by, but I'll admit I wasn't looking to see if it was bright light. I was just thinking, my God, this fire station's so close to this other intersection, they should put up a warning sign. Thanks.
Thank you, Sid. And lastly, we have Kimberly Williams.
Hi, thanks, Michelle. This is Kimberly Williams. I'm a Midcoast resident, and I just want to echo all the comments that have been made up to now. I agree with all of them. I wanted to specifically say that the light poles that Chris mentioned, he made the comment that those poles won't come down, and that is very concerning to me, because I think a mistake of this magnitude needs to be rectified, and that those poles do need to come down. Whoever mentioned the amber lighting flowing from a large tall pole, it's still going to flow out from the property and be a problem. Has a history of sort of doing things. I continue to think that it's partly a problem of oversight on these projects. And I think we need to send a clear message to the county that this has to be fixed in a way that is substantial and not just minimal changes. And so I would like that to be reflected in the letter, especially with regard to the tall poles. Thank you.
Thank you, Kimberly. It looks like we have two more hands raised. Mark Welch. Mark, yeah, it looks like, can you please unmute if you'd still like to speak?
My apologies. Can you hear me now?
Yes.
Yes, I'd like to reiterate a little bit what Kimberly was just reiterating on that. My concern is all we're going to have is 25 spotlights shining straight down. Is that going to ameliorate any of these issues? Probably not. It's like if this whole process from start to finish, if they didn't want something, they went ahead and did it anyway. And this is what's happening here as well. We're seeing this over and over again with this station. You know, the lights weren't even shown on the renderings. Okay, fine. We'll just put them in. We'll spend the additional money. It's fine. Now I'm understanding they won't come down. So all these things that we're saying right now are are not. Are they going to be doing anything? Can anything be done except mute them? I'm seeing no. I'm not understanding if anything else can be done, and just muting them is not going to be sufficient. They should be taken down, but it's not going to happen. Can anybody help with saying, why can't they just do what they said that they were going to do initially, instead of all this going around? Thank you.
Okay, thank you, Mark. Next is Lisa Ketchum.
Hi, thank you. Just a couple things. The Steve Terry remarked that a lot of work had been done in 2018 on the zoning, the development standards, and it was for some reason halted. Basically, I was deeply involved in that, trying to help CDRC get that started. And this of course is the key thing for them to have purview over other projects besides residential. And when upper, what do you call it, senior staff found out what was going on, they shut it down. And basically the story is that they don't have bandwidth to update this zoning now, and so even though it's some sort of nebulous future thing, I just wanted to stress that this is why that is so important. And the MCC wrote a letter in support of it, of updating the C1. Now, granted, this is not the C1, but this all fits in. And that the CDRC needs to have purview over these kind of buildings, such as the Montero Hotel, such as the RV park, whatever it is, because if they did, this would have been addressed at that stage. It would have been a public hearing here locally on the coast side that people could have attended. They would have asked to see the whole lighting plan and said, wait, this is way too much. The pole height, I wouldn't give up on this. Okay, so first of all, at least according to the online permit site, this building permit has not been finalized. And if that's true, this is a good thing. The planner for this project for the CDP is Summer Burleson. She's quite responsive. And when I was on the MCC in 2017, I drafted a letter, and the council asked for the concept plan for the landscaping at that time. If you were on Avenue Alhambra, they planted trees and everything. You wouldn't even see the ocean anymore. And so I asked the planner to put in a condition there to limit the height of the landscaping so that it wouldn't be more than 3 feet above Avenue Alhambra at maturity. And she put that as a condition of approval in the staff report. So it was all set to go when the project was approved. And so basically, it sounds to me like these light poles are sticking up into that view corridor. And for that reason alone, that could have been addressed. I think that, I wasn't paying attention, but when this issue first came up, that the lighting, when people saw the lighting, to contact that planner right then, say, has this been approved? The lighting is a problem. What can you do? Just like I say, she's quite responsive. So I wouldn't give up on ask for what you want and see if the pole height can be reduced so it doesn't stick up above whatever it was she had for the landscaping or whatever. Reduce the number of poles. It's too many. Also, the flagpole has uplighting, and there was discussion online on the building permit that the lighting was required if you're going to leave the flag up all night. Well, just tell them to take the flag down at night, and you don't need the uplighting at the flagpole. They're there all the time. They can take the flag down, put the flag up. What else they got to do when they're hanging around the station? So, not that you need to take time tonight to redo the letter. The letter's great, but follow up with these conversations and talk to Summer and explain it, that this is a real concern. So anyway, that's good. That's enough for me. Thanks.
Thank you, Lisa. Appreciate that perspective.
Can I respond real quick?
Sure.
Okay, I just wanted to let you know we have been talking to Summer, and she's been very responsive, but she's having a difficult time also getting them to address the lighting, but it has gone forward a little bit. And I really like your comment about just take the flag down at night. Such a simple thing. It's just what a great idea, you know? So thank you for that.
Thank you. It looks like Catherine has her hand up again. Do you have a quick comment? We do need to move on, but go ahead quickly. Catherine, did you want to say something, or looks like you took your hand down?
I'm sorry, I was on mute. I'm not used to this. I think everybody should also send a letter to the fire department to show how substantial the protest is and get your friends to do it. They will be responsive if we all tell them. And I'm more than willing to send them a note. I'm sure Deborah Lardy is, and a whole bunch of other people. And nice to hear you, Steve Terry.
Great point. Thank you. Looks like Sherry has her hand up again. Sherry, sorry. Can you say something really quickly, Sherry? You're off mute now, or you're muted now. Please go off mute. Push. Yeah, there you go.
Hi, I just have one very quick comment. My wife and I, and some neighbors attempted to request minimal impacts to our homes on a variety of issues from the new fire station. But I want to let you know that CAL FIRE has its own Congress, and we were totally ignored. That's all I have to say. Thanks.
Thank you. And thanks for making that quick. Okay. That is it for public comment. Next, I need to have a motion to approve this letter.
So moved.
Thank you, Greg. Is there a second?
Second.
Dan, thank you for seconding that. Okay, let's go around the council, starting with Dave, because he has his hand up,
Okay.
and make any comments or opinions on this letter.
So I generally approve of the letter, but there are some things in there that I believe need to be changed. I want to offer an amendment. Actually, it's a sentence added and a number of small changes. So I can show it. I can share the changes. They're marked, but we might want to go all the way around the council before I make that amendment.
Do you want to state just the type of, like, the changes that you want to make?
Some actual problems with the letter.
Sorry, Dave, I can't hear you very well. Can you speak just a little louder, please?
Nobody else had trouble hearing me earlier. There are some problems with the letter. The MCC cannot make a determination that something is not compliant. We don't have that power. So that wording has to be changed. There's a sentence I'd like to add at the end that I think will make it stronger. The addressee list needs to say a specific name in the fire department, either the fire chief or the fire board or something. You can't just say Coastside Fire Protection District. Let's see. Let me make sure I've got everything in here. I'm not a fan of saying something was not true. That's a really bold statement to make. I think we should just say correct. And then the sentence I want to add at the end is, we further suggest that only necessary safety lighting be on continuously after dark, and that other lights are illuminated automatically or manually as required.
Okay, let's, now that you've stated that, when everyone else has a chance to speak on the council, please indicate whether you agree with Dave's suggestions, and then we can make an official amendment, a motion to amend. Let's next go with Claire.
I support Dave's amendment or potential amendment. I would also wonder if we should add a sentence about the process that the CDC is trying to pursue about reviewing non-residential properties, since this does relate to this and it's an ongoing issue. Other than that, I thought the letter was good. I thought it was clear. My preference on these things is to make them short, because there's always the possibility that somebody who's just looking at this as it comes across their desk will not read it all if it's too long. If it needs to be long, there might be some way of summarizing everything really succinctly in the first paragraph, so that they get the gist of it without having to go through the whole thing. But otherwise, I thought it was good.
Okay, thanks, Claire. Next, let's go to Len.
I think it's a very good letter. I don't have anything further to add to the discussion.
And do you agree with the amendments
Yes, I do.
or the comments? Yes. Okay, perfect. And next to Greg.
So I know how clunky it is to try and amend letters. So I would favor Dave's amendments, but no others at this time, even though I appreciate Claire's sentiments. I think that the problems that have been discussed here possibly deserve another letter, because the Design Review Commission obviously needs to be empowered. I can't understand how it took this long to come to our attention, and guess who's going to pay for the fixes? So I want to know whose performance evaluation is getting docked, because they've wasted our money, as well as, discomfiting an entire neighborhood. I mean, so I would go with a letter with Dave's amendments, but I think there needs to be some follow-up, because this just should not happen. I mean, we've heard way too much information here today about how obvious it was this was a violation of code.
Okay, thanks, Greg. Next, let's go to Dan.
Yeah, so I just want to make it clear, I'd like to see the poles come down. I think they can do something with indirect lighting, something that could be appropriate. As it is now, it's not even close to being acceptable. And then, there wasn't much mention about the health issue of the blue light. The American Medical Association advises to minimize the blue-white light and keep the color under 3000 K. As far as Dave's amendment, I'm sorry, I just I could not. Can you review that? I couldn't hear everything. It's hard to. I don't know if you can put it up on a.
Yeah, when he
highlight.
makes the motion to amend, what I can do is share the latest version of the letter and just type it up and share my screen so we can see it all.
I've got a copy with the changes on it that I'll share.
Can you highlight the changes?
Yes.
Okay.
Do you want to share right
You
now?
want me to do that now?
Sure. No. Well, apparently Dan needs to see it to make comments on it, so it'll be easier that way. You want to scroll up to the beginning?
Yeah, I'm going to. My problem is I need to get back to the Adobe, not the shared.
Dan, while he's doing that, can you continue?
Yeah, well, I gotta the way the last sentence Dave wrote in there, it's kind of tough to, because he's tough to argue against, but I don't think it's necessary, because with light there's safety. There's gonna be they can design the lighting system to be not obtrusive and to be safe. So I don't think I think that last sentence that I just saw is giving them a little too much. It's very clear. yeah, I think, I think that's going to give them something to say, oh, well, we need this to be safe. And I just don't, I'm certain that they can provide low-level lighting and have safety walking on the sidewalk and being able to maneuver in the yard. So I don't think the last sentence is necessary. I'm okay with the believes. You want to scroll up? Can we start? You want to? Okay, that's fine. Fine with the correct, yes. As far as code compliance, sure, I'm okay with that. List specific person. Sumner's names there.
Okay, ultimately, we'll need to vote on the amendment. We need to move
What
on.
else?
So
Can you
Dan, do you have
scroll
any other
down? Whatever.
comments?
We need to itemize the amendment. So
Yeah,
I
we
see the
will when he
correct.
makes the motion.
Can we scroll down? Okay, so it's 3 areas or 4 areas. The specific person. Okay, I think I'm okay with everything except for the last sentence.
Okay, thank you. And Jill, let's go back to you. Did you have any comments?
I do. So I'm okay with everything except the last sentence. And so I have a couple things about that. The old fire station had one light by the front door. It was this tiny little light, that illuminated the door, and that's it. And so I don't think they need any safety lighting on at night. And I'm concerned that if we add that last sentence, they'll just say, well, everything's safety. We need those poles. We need everything. It's all safe. And it's kind of like giving them an out, and I don't want to give them that. But the rest, I'm fine with. Thanks.
Okay.
Yeah, they
Thank you,
just
Jill.
need to
Back to Dave.
So I want to
Has his
point
hand
out
raised.
that nowhere in the letter have you asked them to remove any lights or turn any lights off. That's why I added this.
We asked for modifications to the lighting.
Yeah, but not
It's up to them.
But not to turn anything off that doesn't need to be on. And most of those lights only need to be on when a truck is in the driveway. And you have to remember that they said the reason they put the lights up that high was because when they are working on the trucks in the driveway, especially cleaning them after a fire, they need lighting above the highest point of the highest vehicle. And that's why they're at least 20 feet up. Whether they need to be 20 or 25, that's not for me to decide. Anyway, my point is, no matter how much they dim those lights, no matter how much they shield them, no matter how much they turn them to amber, they don't need to be on 95% of the time at night. That's why I added that.
Okay. Do you want to make a motion?
Yes, I move to amend the letter as shown in the copy on display, which I'll be happy to send out to whoever's the author.
I second the motion.
Thank you. Okay. We've already pretty much discussed this, so I suggest we move to a roll call vote. Len, can you call the roll on the amendment? This is a motion to amend the letter as shown.
Okay. Again, voting.
Oh, sorry. Can you scroll back up to the top quickly, Dave? Lisa did comment in chat that Mike Cravell is on leave until March.
Well, it'll still go to whoever's the code compliance manager in his absence. I'm certain.
Okay.
His email.
And do you have a specific person to add to the, I guess, the planning and building department and the fire district, or?
But you've
Or is
already
it just
got
a,
summer from planning, so I assume that that was intended to cover somebody else. So the authors of the letter should choose that somebody else or drop that. And for the seat and for the fire protection district, I would recommend Chief Cox.
Yeah, I think we should. Jonathan Cox, that's good.
okay, let's include that as part of this amendment.
Okay.
Okay, so let's call a roll call vote on the amendment as shown here. Len, could you go ahead? You're on mute.
Jill,
No, because of the last sentence.
okay. Dave. Dave,
He was unmuted, on mute.
Yes.
Claire,
Claire, you're on mute.
Might as well be on mute because I'm not really sure. Why don't you pass me for a minute?
Greg,
Yes.
Dan,
No, because of the last sentence.
myself, yes. Michelle,
Yes.
back to you, Claire.
I'm going to say no because of the last sentence.
It passes 4-3.
Okay. And now there is a motion on the table to approve the letter.
Is it seconded? I'll second it if it's not.
I believe it was.
It's been moved and seconded already.
Okay, so let's vote on the motion to approve the letter as amended.
Okay. I will vote yes. Next is Dan.
And may I remind people that, you know, our total vote will be included. So if you want to be on record as having approved the letter, I would, you know, you can vote however you want, but I would recommend if you support the letter in general, even with the amendment, you should vote for the letter.
Dan,
Yeah, you know, I just feel like this has been hijacked and I have no choice. Really not happy with voting yes.
but are you voting yes?
Yes.
Thank you. Greg,
Ramsey, yes.
Claire,
Yes.
Dave,
Yes.
Jill,
I am very concerned that we've just diluted the letter, so I will hesitantly vote yes.
and Michelle.
Yes.
Passes 7-0.
All right, great. Dave, please send me the final draft so I can put it into the same format that I had in the Word document and finalize it.
Absolutely.
Thank you. Okay, that's it for the main agenda items. I think I had a request from Greg to skip these last two, but I think we can make it pretty quick. Council activity. Let's go around the council. Please raise your hand if you have anything to speak about here. I think that Len wanted to make a brief comment about agenda changes. Did you want to do that now, or do you want to hold off until the next meeting?
Let's just put that off. I do have other comments to make.
Okay, go for it.
So basically, I've had two contacts with regard to the Murata pedestrian bridge. We received a letter from DPW answering questions that we had. And I had a conversation with Len Mataran, who is the director of One Shore, who will be a major player in the future of these types of issues. So that'll be included in further information. Second, I've received two requests that relate to problems on Highway 1 and forwarded those on to Caltrans appropriate groups. That's it.
Thank you. Anyone else on the council have any items to report here? No, okay. Then let's move on to future agendas. So the agenda for the February 10th meeting will include the Medio Creek Bridge. And Len, Greg and I are working on that. We are discussing whether we want to bring a letter forward at that meeting. We will also have a presentation on from Nicholas Calderon from San Mateo County Parks with an update on the pump track. And there have been a couple other items that we will ask him to speak about. And then we will have an agenda item on the MCC newsletter. As people may remember, we sent our first edition of the newsletter out in November, and we will discuss the future plans for the MCC newsletter. And then on February 24th, right now, we just have Connect the Coast side. I'm sure that other things will come up, and we may want to bring those part of that agenda to delve into more detail on Connect for a future agenda item.
Okay.
It looks like Michelle froze. Can I ask a question? Does anybody know if they have ever gotten back to us on those Caltrans signs, the ones they wanted to put in?
Well, they said they would work with their particulars to address our needs, and that's now part of a program. When they get to the particulars, they'll be back to us.
Thanks, Lynn.
Hi, Michelle. Are you back yet? Claire, as a vice chair, we'll start the adjournment? Okay.
Yes.
Okay.
Do I have a motion to adjourn?
Yes, I move.
Second.
Okay, let's go down. Jill,
Yes.
Dave,
Yes.
Claire,
Yes.
Greg,
Yes.
Ann,
Yes, and good night.
good night. Me, yes. Michelle, I'm sure will vote yes. She finally gets back on. Okay, thanks, everybody.
Good night.